Time to put out the finishing touches on Agatha All Along. We recap episodes 8 and 9 of Agatha All Along, the new show on Disney Plus, the most recent trip into the MCU. And Tim Kelly joins me to discuss episodes 8 and 9. Tim, I got to say, this has been one of my favorite
Mm,
overall shows or movies that we've had, especially recently.
yeah.
And I think right after I watched the last couple,
Mhm.
I think I was feeling a little disappointed. And it
Mm,
may have been based on things I was creating because the more I
mhm.
watched the show back, I watched it, I think three times the last couple.
Yeah.
I liked it more and more because we have to
Same.
be careful when we're fans of stuff that
Mhm.
we don't put our own hopes into shows, right? Things
Mhm.
that weren't necessarily supposed to be there. Did we get a Wanda view? No. Did we get a little bit more
Mhm.
of Rio and Agatha that we may have wanted? Not necessarily, but there
Mhm.
wasn't anything bad, and it put a bow
Right.
on things that it started. It didn't leave a bunch of stones unturned. It has stones
Mhm.
that they can revisit later. So I think I just wanted a little bit more from it. Watching it
Mhm.
back, this show did a lot of things really, really well. I have so few complaints,
Yeah.
and just from top to bottom, it was such a blast. Like watching it from start to finish, which I did in the
Yeah.
last couple days, was really fun. And I mean, I just think this is one of the higher uh, feelings I've had coming out of a Marvel MCU show or movie in a while. I'm really pumped about this and where we could go.
Absolutely. I mean, consistency is key, right? And I think this was the most consistent
Good word. Yep.
MCU series so far. And we were noting that throughout, the season. Like, wow, they really haven't missed. I mean, here and there, a few gripes, but from episode to episode, they kept it really consistent with how interested we were in all the different characters and all the different stories they raised, the questions they raised. They did give us a lot of answers and conclusions to those arcs in the final episodes. We had the questions going in, like we do with all these MCU series. Are they going to stick the landing? I feel like they really did. That's part of that
This was as
consistency.
good
Yeah.
as any. And
Absolutely.
they've changed a little bit in how like they formatted some of these shows. Like they're
Hmm.
using, you can understand why they released the last two together because they
Yeah.
kind of use the two of them as this one
Hmm.
big long finale where you have
Hmm.
a lot of the knockout drag out fight and cool battle
Yeah.
scenes and then sort of like a after that, almost an
Yeah.
epilogue, people were kind of
Exactly.
calling it, right?
Yeah, a great epilogue because
Loved
I
it.
feel like it started a new journey for these characters. It really planted the seeds for where they can go next. But also it illuminated so much of the backstory. And like you said, you went back and rewatched the whole series. That was something throughout the whole series. Again, we were saying that it makes the stuff that came before better. You can go back and watch WandaVision, and WandaVision has deeper meaning now, and that's true of this series. You go back to the first episode, and everything's going to play a little bit differently when you know the character's motivations and you really understand where Agatha is coming from.
You watch it back now, understanding after episode 8 that Billy
Yeah.
has created the Witch's Road unknowingly
Hmm.
using his chaos magic. Now, that doesn't mean that this is a figment of imagination, but this is what he's done, like what Wanda did in
Yes.
Westview. People don't
Yes.
know what they're doing. This was an actual place that they went to, and people were
Hmm.
being controlled. But he had created this
Yeah.
all in a sort of labyrinth Wizard of
Hmm.
Oz way, where you
Yeah.
look around his room, all the posters, all the figurines helped to put together this image of what he thought the Witch's Road would be. And
Yeah.
I thought it was so fascinating in these two episodes, we find out that he has created it off
Yeah.
of basically a fake creation that Agatha had. Like Agatha
Exactly.
created this song as a way to lure witches, as a way
Hmm.
to make them think there was this road, there was this place where witches could go to get what they wanted, the ultimate
Yeah.
power, whatever they gain. But Agatha made the whole thing up. she used to use it with her son as kind of like a matchstick men luring, conning witches to steal their power. It's like a fascinating way that the song about the witch's road was created. And then we actually have this created in the figment of Billy here. So I thought it was really, really well done in the last couple episodes. And again, like just watching back through everything, now knowing that little things make a lot more sense, little words and phrases that Agatha uses, which is, kind of patronizing Billy some of the time. Well, yeah, you did this, or this is so dramatic, or oh gosh, are we done yet? Or oh my, now we got to start all over. Now things
Didn't
make
know
a
you had it
little
in
more
you.
sense. Yep.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, just down to the title of the series, Agatha All Along. I mean, obviously harkens back to the WandaVision big reveal that she was behind everything. But here we find out it's this great double kind of reveal, because at the end of episode 8 we find out, oh, it's actually Billy all along, and then we go even further, and no, it was Agatha all along. She created this thing, like you said, as this long con, but it had this really beautiful poignant kind of origin that her son Nicholas was just creating it as they're walking along the road, and it's a song about a winding road, and I think even the original one, it's like more of a major key, and then it shifts into a minor key as it evolves and becomes this darker thing. What a great origin story there. It really adds so much to Agatha, because it doesn't take away from what we know about her. She's still doing these really bad things, but we kind of understand her motivations a little bit more. There's a self-preservation and also, a preservation of Nicholas that's kind of implied there, that she's doing all this stuff for. But, it adds an element of just complexity to her character, because she's not plain good or plain bad. They never really soften the edges of her. Yeah, exactly. But we find ourselves, sympathizing with her, empathizing with her, and rooting for her in the end. And that's a really interesting dynamic, because they really never pulled any punches with her. They didn't retcon anything to make her seem like, oh, she was meaning to do good all along. I mean, they made it so, at the end of this series, it's very clear that she was going to kill all those witches and not really feel bad about it. She still doesn't really feel bad about it. She's actually like, hey, Jennifer Kale got away, so we're up one. It's she's not sad about Sharon. She doesn't even remember her name. It's interesting, and I find that appealing. I think because they really could have softened it. They could have nerfed her character and made it more quote unquote palatable. But in the end, they stayed true to what the original vision was.
It's more real this way. So few people are all good or all bad.
Oh yeah.
Right. So few people are just you can just trust that they're going to do the good thing or the bad thing. Most people are a little more flawed, and they do a great job of just what you're hitting at. You sympathize for her a little bit, you feel for her, but you never really go all in thinking she's good.
No.
Right? They don't make you come full circle, and that's like a really tricky tightrope that you got to walk, because you don't want, if they obviously have future plans for her, they don't want her to be just this now Captain America character, right? Where she just does all good. That becomes a little bit, right? It doesn't make sense. But you do got to be careful too that you don't make their origin story so sad or so where they're the victim, so victimizing to them, to where they're just not the heel anymore, right? Or they're not the bad guy in any way, shape, or form. We feel bad for Agatha, but we see with her son, she always had to go too far. And so we can understand everyone has trauma, everyone has struggles, and you or I are parents. We would do anything for our children, but you're not going to murder, right? You still can't, there's still a line that you have that you can't cross for us as viewers feeling bad for someone and going all the way. It's like a Baron Zemo Killmonger thing where they get really close to us wanting to really root for them before they remind us that, okay, these people are still off the rail. They're off, they're still crazy. They're doing things that other normal people wouldn't do. I think that's so intriguing because, one, it's awesome performance from Catherine Hahn. 2, it's just really
Oh
good
yeah.
writing. 2, and
Yeah.
it's not it's difficult, right? It's the opposite of lazy writing, because lazy
Mhm.
writing makes it very easy for you to make a good guy into bad, and then you just leave him the bad guy into good, and that's where they sit. That's where they sit. Agatha
Right.
is going to be towing that line now,
Mhm.
and I think that's a fun space. I heard somebody say that Agatha should become like, I think it was on one of the new Rockstars ones, maybe, that like she should
Mhm.
become like the new Wong, showing up in like every mystical, scary,
Yeah.
evil
Yeah.
horror thing. Like anything that's like got a horror tint to it, anything that's like multiverse, Doctor Strange, feels like it's a little darker. There should be
Yeah.
a scene or two of Agatha messing with people,
Yeah.
screwing with people. I'd sort of love that. And I think they
Yeah.
created a really cool new world here, TK, with this show and these characters.
Absolutely. I mean, we get to see, another corner of the MCU, like we've talked about in the past. It can be so much when you're dealing with, this entire reality and, in fact, a multiverse. So it's really nice to focus on this supernatural aspect of this universe, and it's not just doing like a tee up for future projects. Like this project itself was worthwhile. I enjoyed
And
every
it's going to
episode and
stand
the overall
alone.
experience, and it will, yeah. But I also feel that it adds to the tapestry of the MCU in a really, really refreshing way. All these characters that weren't around before that are now in the mix. I mean, obviously we already had Agatha and we had Wanda, and they represented kind of the witchy supernatural side of the MCU alongside of Doctor Strange and his cohorts. But now we have Jennifer Kale in the mix. We've got the rest of the coven. They've passed, but maybe we'll see them as ghosts or flashbacks. We've got obviously Wiccan, a very powerful a supernatural character who's a part of the Young Avengers moving forward. We talked about some other series that have delved into the supernatural a little bit, and it's just these characters are so ripe for crossover with that. Midnight Suns is like a group, an Avengers type team up group that they've released a video game from recently, and I could see them really pushing for that in the next 5 years or so. A movie coming out, but that's a Midnight Suns team up movie. There's really great characters there that we've already seen in the MCU. Man Thing's been introduced, Elsa Bloodstone, Werewolf by Night, Jennifer Kale, Wanda, Billy, Agatha, Frank Castle. We can mix in some other
Oh,
darker
yeah.
heroes there, Ghost Rider and things. So like we already have a lot of these pieces on the board. And then this series was just such a good template and example of like, hey, look how much fun we can have in this world and like what they can bring. Aside from that, I love the idea that the Witch's Road is a figment of Billy's imagination, that he created it. But we've also had in the past the example from Doctor Strange that like a dream is essentially a multiverse, a
Mm-hmm.
reality in the multiverse. So
Yep.
almost anything you could think of is a reality in the multiverse. So it stands to reason that Billy was tapping into another universe, that the road as he manifested it within this universe, does exist out there. And then that could play a role somewhere down the line within the MCU that could bring that back. And maybe the road is different for everybody, but this was the first time it truly manifested within this universe.
And
There's so much options here that we can explore and bring back. It's just really fertile ground.
let's get into chronologically some of the things that happened in
Yeah.
episodes 8 and then into 9. Episode 8 was titled "Follow Me, My Friend, to Glory at the
Yeah.
End," which is one of the lines of The Witch's Road, the Ballad of the Witch's Road. And what's interesting about it is it's just a blatant lie that Agatha created, right? She has no friends and there is no glory at the end. They're all going to
Right.
die. Everyone that she lures in. So
Yeah.
we actually open up this episode with Rio guiding Alice to the afterlife.
Mhm.
Alice is
Yeah.
dead. She's lying on the floor. And we get this upside down shot as she gets up to follow death. And Alice is
Mhm.
kind of sad, like anyone might feel looking at themselves. Like, oh, my time is
Yeah.
up? Really? And
Exactly.
she
Mhm.
she says, that's all the time I get. as she
Mm-hmm.
sees her own body lying on the floor. That was like, oh, thinking about
Yeah.
that, watching yourself and being like, no, I need a little more time. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, no more time. And actually, that's what Rio says. If I had a nickel for
Yeah.
Alice realizes, though, she finally broke the curse.
Yeah.
She can do something with her life now. Rio mentioned you're a protection witch. You died protecting someone. And so begrudgingly, Alice follows
Mm-hmm.
Rio off into the green fog. It's almost like a little cold open here where we
Yeah.
had this moment and they showed us. And I really enjoyed a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the death Rio stuff where
Yeah.
she's not walking around like the Grim Reaper tapping
Mm-hmm.
people like death you see in like Bill and Ted or in,
Yeah.
South Park or anything like that. It's a very like, your time has come. You
Yeah.
need to follow me. And we see like, oh, that's really all it is. Like when death appears, you know that your time is up.
Yeah.
And that was the case here. And everything to do with Aubrey and the way that she looks as death with the
Mm-hmm.
green, with all of the attention to detail to her character, I thought was really, really good. And um, just a cool little moment here with Alice where it feels, we talked a few weeks ago, it feels like forever
Mm-hmm.
ago when Alice actually passed away, when Alice was gone.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's great to see her come back, and this is like a really strong. It's a short scene, but it's really strong and poignant, and it's very meaningful as well into the overall, you know, the construction of the story because it really foreshadows what we see a little bit later with Nikki. So we kind of get the sense of how it works when death comes and touches somebody, and we see from the perspective of Alice, which is really cool. But I love how she expresses that universal truth of like, I thought I had more time, and there's that irony of like she just got to where she needed to be and overcame something, but she has to leave. She can't get to like live in that enjoyment of that self-realization. That's some really good dramatic irony. But then you also have Death saying, if I had a nickel, which obviously that's a little bit of a cliche there, but it's so appropriate because she's essentially this like stand-in for I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I think Charon or Chiron, the ferryman in Greek mythology that takes you over the river Styx into the afterlife. And what do you give to the dead for their journey? You give them a coin, usually a coin in the mouth. So I felt like there was a specificity there with saying, if I had a nickel, they're kind of tied into that. It was definitely, for me, it was referencing that moment there. But it also ties into this theme that we explore a little bit later of just the nature of death, the promise of it. We all know we're facing it. We don't know how much time we have left. Later, in the second part of this two-part episode, in the finale, we get that moment where death comes for Nikki the first time,
Yep.
and Agatha is given this gift, quote unquote. It's also a curse. You could look at it of more time.
A
But
ticking clock, right? Just not really
exactly,
knowing when it's going to end, but you hear the tick, 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 tick,
that's life, and that's the nature of life and death. So it's really great allegory for that. The nature of our lives and
what
how
we
we
have to
die.
deal with as
And
normies every day, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and also of later on when death visits Nikki, it's like this allegory for a terminal illness. You have a child, or you find out yourself that you're terminally ill. It's coming. You have this shortened amount of time, but you still don't know how much time you have left. So I thought that was just such a perfect embodiment of what we all have to deal with. At some point or another in life. That's just the nature of our time here, is that we don't know how much time we have. Even if we know it's going to be less, we don't. Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is
You
it 10
never
years?
know, right? A
Yeah. And
day,
so,
a month, a
yeah,
week, you don't really, really know. Um,
yeah. So I love
so
that.
So we get back to the road. We got Agatha, Jen, and Billy on the road. This was just after Lilia had sacrificed herself for them to continue to buy them time along the road.
Mhm,
We have Jen and Billy that are together. They are separated momentarily from Agatha, who
mhm.
encounters Rio. Rio says, "Your coven is shrinking. First Alice, now Lilia." It's nice she took the Salem 7 with her. The bodies are really piling up just like you promised. And Agatha kind of smiles. Did you doubt me? Rio and Agatha have a little back and forth. Yeah, I thought there was going to be a trick in there somewhere, and there was. You were distracting me from him. That's what Rio said. Agatha responds, you're a big girl. I knew you'd find it out eventually. This next little bit is important because Rio says he is an abomination. He is disrupting the sacred balance. I know how you feel about him. Oh, Agatha kind of scoffs. I've only known that kid for 2 minutes. Rio reminds her, I watch you just as closely as you watch everyone else, which is a really creepy thing for someone to say to you. Just lets you know that you're just being watched at all moments. This walk,
especially when that's coming from death.
Death. And death was like your ex-partner of some sort that knows you as well as anyone. This walk with another woman's son on a road that doesn't stop, Agatha screams.
Yep.
Right? They don't want to let us know yet that road doesn't really exist, you know?
Yeah. I knew in that moment, though, I stopped it. I told my wife, Jackie, I was like, what was she going to say there? She was going to say doesn't exist. Yeah. Like that has to be what it was. Like the way that her words were flowing, like that had to be what was coming next. So that was a really, really strong foreshadowing moment.
And Rio reminds Agatha that no one in history has had special treatment like you. That actually triggers a real emotional response from Agatha. You call what you did special treatment?
Right.
You gave me nothing. You took, and that's usually your move, Rio interrupts. She says, why did you let them believe those things about you, about Nikki? Because the truth is too awful. Okay. So Agatha, at this moment, we find out she feels guilty. She feels some shame for what she did. We never really know or knew that about her up until this moment. She never seems ashamed. She seems proud of what she's done before. So this is a moment where we do see some of the humanity in her that we are wavering on. We're not sure if she's good, if she's bad. When it comes to Nikki, it's almost like the thought of Nikki is just too much. Like you encounter some people like this who I know some people who everyone grieves differently. They love talking about someone that they lost because it makes them feel good. They love to share the memories and the moments. Other people, if you bring something up, they're going to start crying immediately. Like they can't even deal with the thought of them. And there's no right or wrong way to grieve. It's just different. Agatha feels like someone where anytime Nikki is mentioned, the son is mentioned, Nicholas Scratch, she's uncomfortable. She doesn't she can't cope with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is an open wound. It's like literally scratching in an open wound anytime she hears it. And it's really like at this point, as an audience member, it's very intriguing because we fully believed, I think, up until that point that she like sacrificed her son or something, or at least we were very strongly.
That she was probably involved with why he was dead. Yeah, right. Like she did something to make him not be alive when it was really the opposite.
Yeah, and then it's very clear that Rio is being sincere there, and that it's I believe her. Anything that she says at that moment, I'm believing her that so Agatha didn't sell Nikki. And then that raises a new question. Well, what happened? Like how did Nikki die? Like what took him away? And like why is she so ashamed of it too?
That's what we're asking at that moment, right? And that's why they give us that's what will lead us to the real big flashback coming after this. But right now, at this moment when we're watching this, like we need to know, well, what the hell happened with Nikki? So we were thinking this whole time you were the awful person. If that didn't happen, you got to let us know, and they will, not long from now. But that's a big moment because this is where things turn a little bit on her, and we get her in the middle of not being all bad or all good.
Yeah, and she does such a good job with the performance. You kind of touched on this, but Catherine Hahn is so good. She's got to win
something, or like
she needs to. Yeah,
the
at least nomination.
Yeah, because it's just her range in here from being like funny, silly cackling to then what we see her when she loses a child.
Yeah.
You very rarely have to go from that extreme to the other extreme in the span of 2 episodes of TV.
And Yeah, you're 100% right. And that, in the span of one scene, she'll
Yeah.
bring so much depth, so much layers to her character because she's definitely, we discovered this. The more we were with her, the more we understand this about her, that she's being very like presentational and um, over the top on certain things. Like when she's lying, she's not really a
Yes.
great liar. And
No.
adds all these flourishes to the characters and stuff. And she goes very big, and those are really entertaining to watch, as a viewer. But the more we see it, the more we
You
truly understand that
understand
they're
her
fake
ticks.
moments, that she's being manipulative in those moments. But then we get these great moments from Catherine Hahn where the real Agatha comes out, and there's these human ticks and nuances, and she just feels fully realized. And I'll say this, and I'm not saying this to bag on Aubrey Plaza in any way, because I absolutely love Aubrey Plaza, and I think she's great in this and great in this scene. But Catherine Hahn just blows her out of the water in the scene. There's a little bit of a
Mm,
disconnect
yeah.
in my estimation, on first watch and on the rewatch, especially in these episodes. Catherine Hahn is operating on just a different level, and Aubrey Plaza is a little bit more just presentational. She's playing like the straightforward aspects of the character. She's doing a good job. She's in it, but it's just not quite reaching that level of authenticity that I'm getting from Catherine Hahn, who just puts on a master class in these scenes.
And I will say, I think it was either the folks on the Ringer or
Mm-hmm.
it was New Rock Stars who were
Mm-hmm.
making that point to give a lot of
Mm-hmm.
credit to Joe Locke as an actor
Yeah.
because,
Oh yeah.
man, when
Yeah.
could you imagine how like if
Mm-hmm.
you're a young kid and you're sitting there and then you've got Catherine Hahn like doing her
Mm-hmm.
thing in one corner and Aubrey Plaza's over there and they're both so big
Yeah.
too. And like it had to be a little intimidating to be there to try to find your footing and find your voice and not get
Mm-hmm.
completely overshadowed by
Yeah.
two people, and one in this sense, Catherine Hahn, who's just stealing every single scene and every single
Yes.
moment. And I wanted to give him a lot of credit too because
Mm-hmm.
he does a great job of like finding his space there to where he can be like a lot more of the straight well,
Mm-hmm.
he's gay, right, in the show, but he's the
Right.
straight.
Right.
He plays the straight character, but
Mm-hmm.
he plays
Mm-hmm.
the straight man, and you don't. He's not boring. Like he adds a
No.
little something to it. It's unique, which is really hard to do when you're like, I
Mm-hmm.
think about it. I've been on movie sets and I've been in like small stuff. It would be so
Mm-hmm.
intimidating to go stand there next to someone like that who
Yeah.
is just so damn good
Yeah.
at what they're doing. And this you're right. Like even in scenes with Aubrey and in a couple of these, Catherine
Mm-hmm.
just stands out. She just seems like
Yeah.
I and this was from The Ringer. They had said
Mm-hmm.
that she is given one of the best performances of a
Mm-hmm.
character in the MCU. And
Yeah.
when they were going through like some of the character performances, all of
Mm-hmm.
them were characters that had been in two or three or four movies previously or shows where they had time to really figure out who they wanted this
Mm.
character could to be. She just
Yeah.
popped up with this like fully realized, fleshed out character that she never had worked on in anything else.
Yeah.
And it's like as good as Cap, or it's as like honest
Right.
as any of the characters that we've seen created in here. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this was a big moment between Agatha and the Green Witch. Green
Mm-hmm.
Witch with a capital G is how
Right. Yeah.
they go at it. Yeah.
And I love how the scene ends too. It's another great moment of foreshadowing. The scene had a lot of foreshadowing, but that visual of her walking off and toward off into the distance toward a literal backdrop where she cuts it with her dagger,
It's
very
fantastic.
reminiscent of the end of Doctor
She-Hulk.
Strange
She-Hulk
2.
did something
Uh,
similar too with like with
oh
the way
yeah,
they
She
kind of
Hulk
went
too.
like onto the
Yeah,
Disney
yeah,
Plus
yeah, yeah.
screen. It's just a
But,
very like, breaking the fourth wall,
mhm,
meta. She
yeah,
slices a hole into like the nylon background of
yeah.
the actual setting that they built. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. It's very much like almost like a Wizard of Oz type, uh, you know, scene or setting, and it's like a canvas or something in the background. Yeah, like a painted backdrop, which I just love because it shows that her power, that she can essentially step through different aspects
Time
of
and
reality.
space and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it also tips the cap at the idea that the artifice of it all, and that she sees through it, that this is all a manifestation of of Billy, and it's his hex, that it's not actual reality. So, and she's aware of that, and she's showing us that, and Agatha, that she's aware of that as well, and in addition to just showing off her power to move through these spaces. I just loved it, and again, it references Wizard of Oz, which has been a really great, reference point, for the witch element, and just the look of the show and the feel for, walking down the road, and the themes throughout. So I love that, again, that consistency, that attention to detail, and that the imagination that went into that. I mean, that was a very creative idea to have the characters do that. It's a very interesting moment, and it fits. It doesn't betray the reality that's been set up. It really adds to it, and it's an interesting flavor. And I love that WandaVision and the show Agatha continues to play with the meta aspects of this story, the MCU in general. And we really don't get a whole lot of that, but this is the time and place. This is the multiverse saga. We get a little bit of that with Deadpool, but
Yeah,
I love to see it. I love to see it when it's done well.
it's got to be in doses, right? Like Deadpool is a
Mhm.
world where we're completely all in on it there. And then in other places, it's good to give a nod once or twice, just to remind us that like we're all in the same place together. We're all having fun. We're all watching these things, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to do it over and over and over repeatedly, because then it would get annoying if it
Yeah.
popped up all over the place. But when it lives with Deadpool and it shows up in certain spots, especially with a character like Death and Aubrey Plaza, like it's perfect there.
Perfect.
And they have before she leaves, they come to an agreement that why they're on the road is she actually calls it a violation, Rio. Finding his brother. His brother isn't out there. The Scarlet Witch stole a second life, and I cannot let him do the same for his twin. I have to take him. Agatha kind of reiterates, though, like she's realizing it and figuring it out. You can't take him, because if Billy is killed, he'll reincarnate again, and then you'll lose him. You actually need him to turn himself in. Oh, I can arrange that. I'll get him to the finish line, and I'll deliver him to you. Okay, so Agatha now is going to weasel her way in, but Rio knows her well enough to say, in exchange for what? Because you're going to eventually die. But Agatha, in a really powerful moment, says, okay, that's fine. I want you to stop pursuing me. I want you to stop making my life hell. And when I die a long, long time from now, I don't want to see your face. Oh, that's pretty brutal to say to someone. Like, when I'm dying, I don't even want to see you. And she's saying this to an ex-lover. And you definitely can see Aubrey wear this one on her face a little bit, right? Because it's like, okay. Like she doesn't doesn't cry, but you can see the tears behind the tough face that she's putting on here. It's somehow, and then she gets into she walks through that backdrop. And in a lot of this with Aubrey and with Catherine, I think they do a great job of making things both a little scary, but also comedic at the same time. It's another tiptoe where it's like, this is a little creepy, but you can't help but laugh.
Yeah. It's silly. Yeah. There's walking into a backdrop and then just cutting it. There is something kind of funny about that. Yeah. It's because it's revealing, that everything is fake. It's drawing attention to the artifice of it, and that's almost like ragging on it in a way. It's like mocking the world they're in the moment,
the art and everything.
So, very cool stuff.
So Billy and Jen now find Agatha on the road. And it's right after this moment when Billy says, I'm fully aware that Agatha Harkness can never be anything but a covenless witch. And she hears him. Ouch! Time to finish the road. One trial left until the big score. And she's like, no, just how you pointed out, she comes into this moment really hiding something, because she has just been talking to Rio about how she's going to try to trap Billy and kind of
Yeah.
lure him. So she's super
Yeah. You're right.
conscious of that. She just came out of this conversation talking about Billy, and she goes, "Oh, hey, blah, blah," right? She's like
Yeah.
really big all over the place,
Like
trying to hide
bubbly.
it. I think I've joked
Yeah.
with this before. It's like a Chandler Bing using humor as
Hmm.
a defense mechanism. You know, like anytime
Yeah.
he's like uncomfortable, he starts really going in on the jokes and like really like
Yeah.
laying it
Yeah.
on. And that's her right here.
Hmm.
Earth magic with no green witch. We're back to square one. And she starts ripping on Jenny. There's plenty of overlap between Earth and potions, right? Jenny Kale. Your last name is a vegetable, worst kind. It's like swallowing a doily. I have to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you survived this long, Kale. And she just starts ripping her. My money was on Lilia. What fresh horrors await us? It's the big finish after all. Get ready for fireworks. Get ready for spectacle. Get ready for. And as she's going off on her monologue, she just trips
Yeah.
over their shoes. The shoes they took off at the beginning of the road. So they've come around now in a full circle, and this just pisses Agatha off. It's like they're wasting their time now coming back around, right?
Yeah, and so somebody said there too, like we're back to square one, right? Was that Billy or was that Agatha? I can't
I think
remember.
Billy said, Agatha says we're back to square one.
She says we're back to square one. Okay, so I feel like I thought that there was maybe like a line here that was like it was almost like Billy saying something, and then that's what happens. Maybe I
Well, I think he
missed that
says
though.
our shoes, and then the
Okay.
shoes kind of pop up, and then she says we're
Right.
back where we're started. The witch's road is a circle. This is a finish line. That's it.
Hmm.
That's it. And they're like, how do we get off the road? Maybe we pass the trial. But then they realize they have to keep going, and they go again.
Hmm.
Jen was like, no,
Yeah.
there's no chance I'm going to go do this again. As Billy stares at the shoes. And then once he puts the shoes on, that's when the next trial starts, when they get transported into Agatha's basement, which is like the morgue setting. That scenery, which is kind of creepy. And they have to prepare for their final trial where they have to grow something in a place with no soil, no water, no light. That's the trial here for them.
This part really moves. I felt like earlier in the season there were a couple moments, and we
started talking about the road, and I think you were going to hit on how there are a couple different points, I think, in these two episodes where it starts to move, right? We get right into it. We're not taking our time. It almost feels in a few spots like it moves too quickly, but then again, and watching it back, it's not like it just has its purpose. It goes right to where it's going to be. There's not a lot of fluff in these scenes, in this particular scene here.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. That's what I was going to say. And it basically touches on my issues with the series, preceding this too. My very few complaints that I had, and they were small complaints, was that a few moments throughout the series felt like we moved from point A to point B a little too quickly. Like there wasn't enough
very quickly
for what they did. And this was an example of that. But it's not the biggest complaint that anyone could have. And I was even going to say, if I'm going to have a complaint, I want it to be something like this, because it's moving fast, so it kind of solves the problem for you. You don't have
and the things happen that you want to happen. They just don't.
You're entertained.
Feels like there may have been like a scene in between, or maybe like one more little part that we could have had, but it's not like you said. It's not the biggest gripe in the world with the show that did really well. It just it has such great moments that some of these moments felt a little rushed. There were a couple.
Yeah. They do so much to set up and foreshadow and plant little seeds for other things that pay off, that when they don't do that, when there's not enough of the seeds planted earlier on, it feels cheaper in contrast with those really
notice
great
it for sure. Yep.
Yeah. And so again, not a big gripe. This didn't ruin it for me, but if I'm making, critiques on the show, this is where I kind of I felt a little bit out of step with the story. But again, small potatoes. I would rather this than the opposite, where something is just like, over, like very heavy-handed, in foreshadowing something, so what's going to happen next, and we were taking way too long, and now I'm bored. This is the opposite of that, so it's good problems, so to speak.
Billy Agatha and Jen now are in medical gowns, and we were able to find out that it was actually Agatha who has been the one that had bound Jen's power for hundreds of years. And in such an Agatha moment, this entire thing that has impacted Jen's life for hundreds of years, the whole point that she's on this witch's road, and Agatha doesn't even realize. Oh, I did that to you? My bad. I'm sorry. I was getting paid for that. I was doing a lot of stuff to people around that time. Like it's that moment from Mad Men, right? In the elevator where it's like, what does it say? I hate you. And it's like, I don't even think about you at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? The opposite of hate is indifference. It's not love, you know?
Right. That's such a great moment in that series too. A great, and I feel often misused a little bit because, in the context of Mad Men, I think the reality is that Don Draper did think about that character quite a bit.
Yep, exactly.
And that character represented a big threat to him, but he was able to, use his Don Draper powers and say that, and the guy believed him. So it hurt too to hear that, because he believed that Don Draper didn't give a shit about him too. That's a really great, rich moment. And yeah, it definitely, I see the parallels here for sure. Like it's consistent with Agatha's, characterization. Like we've been saying, like that's one of the things we really love about the show. It's just, Sharon dies. She doesn't remember her name. And even when she's corrected, she still like doesn't remember her name. She thinks she thinks of her as like that flower lady or something like that. Like, so this is just a part of that, that she doesn't really care or think about other people all that much. But you know what? I don't know if it, similar to the Don Draper thing, I don't know if she was being honest. He might have remembered it and has just been lying the whole time. And because in that moment she did kind of go big in her performance. It was in the middle. I can't say for sure whether she was
me neither
about remembering, or if she had known all along that she'd really screwed over this character, and she was planning on killing her all along too. So maybe she really didn't care that she had taken those powers away. But yeah, either way, I think it works for the character. It was a nice moment. But that specifically, that revelation is at the heart of kind of what I was driving at before when I said that it just moved so fast that it was like
Jen gets her power back and then she's gone.
And then that's it. And it feels like that deserved more, especially if you were about that character. If you were watching the show like, oh, I really want to see Jennifer Kale's episode, her trial, which I guess we got. We didn't get enough of her character arc and whatnot. So I think she was well received, and it's Sashir Zamata from SNL. She was great in the series, and they ended with, her, like you said, she escapes and she actually kind of flies off into the sunset, fully powered. That's a nice ending for her, because I could really see them bringing her back and diving deeper into her story. And, maybe like I mentioned before with Midnight Sun, she could be a member of that. And that would be a lot of fun, really interesting. She could perhaps be, on a team like that, the representation of, witchcraft and the supernatural. Like maybe, Wanda's not going to be on that. Probably Wiccan's not going to be on that. He'll be over with the Young Avengers. I could see Jennifer Kale representing that, kind of that Wanda figure for Midnight Suns. What Wanda is to the Avengers or X-Men. I think Jennifer Kale could be that for, a future Midnight Suns movie.
Yeah, and she had her big moments with Lilia, Jen did, right? That was sort of her real emotional kind of coming to terms, full circle part of the story. So it was almost like a lot of her stuff at this point was kind of done, but we have a lot more to hit on with her. Like we got to go back and see more of her origin story too. And I think we will eventually when she shows back up, we'll probably get a little bit more of what happened with her early on. Yeah. So she makes it out of the road and she's fulfilled what she came to the road to get her power back. She now has her power back. And Agatha in this moment is probably as genuine of an Agatha that we see, where she's truly trying to help Billy. She's actually trying to help him find Tommy's soul. We hear voices of Wanda and Vision as Billy's soul trying to connect with his brother. and they're looking together. They sit down, seated Indian style, and she's like a guide at this point to him,
Yeah.
like leading him to find his brother.
Yeah.
And I'm actually surprised at this next scene that they've had it in there, because they don't usually do this stuff with kids anymore. It wasn't like they don't show a child dying like really graphically, but they show a kid getting bullied, getting pranked, and a kid drowning, like some clips of it. And it's really, it hits home as you're seeing these little clips, because Billy asks Agatha, am I killing this boy so my brother can live?
Yeah. It's a great moment. Yeah. And it's that like is this big like crescendo like moment. It's like they build, and that line just like pops the bubble. Because the editing there is so great. They're doing these great camera movements. I think we're kind of wrapping around them as they're sitting there,
And
I guess as the spirit guide, and we're cross cutting to this like the scene of the drowning, like you're saying, and it's this back and forth, and it's building this tension and rising, and then when that line drops, it hits hard.
Because he's like in the middle of the process, right? Like the process has already started while he's doing it. It kind of reminded me of like in Spider-Man No Way Home, when he's in the middle of doing this spell, and then Peter keeps throwing stuff at him, and he's like, Peter, what the hell? Like it's sort of like that. He's got this thing going, and this is when he realizes, am I killing someone right now? Like he's asking it as it's happening, and that's not the case. He is taking over an empty vessel.
That kid was gonna die. He was gonna they're just finding somebody that's dying at the right point that fits the description, the type of person that Tommy could be. Really, really interesting. It opens up the doors for like this great story in a following season. We've kind of established that Billy really wants to find his brother, but now he's out. Now we know he's out there, and we know just enough about him that it's going to be interesting for Billy to go after him and find him and reunite. And we've seen how it works already with Billy, so we'll see how it plays out with Tommy. It's just going to be a different vessel, a different context. Really cool moment, and well done with the editing and the performances. And then the line that comes right after that heavy line from Billy is just absolutely just a gut punch. Agatha says, sometimes boys die, right? Sometimes boys just die. Like, wow.
Yep.
Like, that I felt that.
You see her reliving the moments with her son when she says that sometimes boys just die.
Yeah.
And there's also kind of an interesting part of this too, as we saw with Billy. Now, when you inhabit a vessel, it's not just a totally empty vessel, right? You actually do have some of those characteristics or memories, like they're all in the mix somewhere. So I was reading and kind of listening to, is the body that Tommy eventually will fill, is this kid going to be an angry kid because he was bullied and picked on, right? Are there going to be some things from this person that makes the Tommy, when he gets in this vessel, a little bit different? Same thing for for Wiccan. He inhabited a very happy child, a kid who had a good family life. I mean, we talked about his mom and dad. Their parents were incredible. They were understanding. They were loving. Like the kid had a good relationship. He had friends. We saw him at the bar mitzvah dancing around. He had a boyfriend. Like the kid had a great life.
Yeah. That's interesting to me. You mentioned he had a boyfriend, but did he? Do we know that for sure?
Right.
If maybe Billy's gay, but William Kaplan was not.
No, you're right. That's
like maybe Billy brought that aspect of his personality to William Kaplan. I can see it going either way, but
to see when you inhabit the two parts of the person trying to come out, and we'll get a lot more into that, I think, in future stuff with Billy and with Tommy. But Billy,
Mhm.
he got what he wanted. He found his brother. So now he's exited the road. He just
Yeah.
vanishes, and it's just Agatha alone.
Yeah.
And these are the moments I think that are some of the most difficult moments as an actor,
Mhm.
when you're not doing and saying like much. She's alone. She doesn't have
Yeah.
very much dialogue right here. She has to pull the locket out that she
Yeah.
has with a strand of her dead son's hair that she kept in there as a
Right.
keepsake, as a memory. And underneath that, there's a small seed from a dandelion,
Yeah.
and she places it in the floor, and using a teardrop she's able to grow this dandelion seed. But
Mhm.
as this is happening and she's trying to grow it, the timer for this trial is running out. The lights start flickering, so she
Yeah.
knows she's about to run out of time. And you do get this real moment where
Yeah.
she is just begging for more time, like we saw
Exactly.
her with
Yeah.
her son. I just need
Yep.
more time, a little more time. She makes it. She is able to get a sprout, but the 10 seconds of her working on this plant, trying to get this thing to grow, they're like as real and raw of like a 10 seconds of her
Yeah.
like, please no, don't, because like you feel that angst from her losing her son like all over
It,
again almost.
it's exactly the same. I mean, she has this the miracle of life, and she's trying to help it grow, and it means everything to her. And all she wants is just a little bit more time with it. That's all she needs. And the sequence is great because they really just like they do well with all the trials to establish a ticking clock and to do so in a unique way. But this way, with it being grow lights and they're shutting off and they start shutting off faster after Billy's gone, it really creates this urgency and this desperation. And it's written all over her face and in her performance with Agatha there. And we really start to connect, what it all means, why this is meaningful to her, and just what's been driving her character all along. And we even got glimpses of it all the way back in WandaVision when, you know, it's revealed that Wanda can bring people back from the dead, and you see this like hope, desperation, confusion, um, this all wash over Agatha's face, like that's possible, like that I can do, like so she's just living in this world, but she just wants to bring this person back to life like more than anything, but she knows she can't, and she's completely stuck, and she's at the absolute end of her rope here, and all that's just played so brilliantly by Catherine Hahn, and it's done so well with the editing and the music, the score here. Um, it's just really really well done, and the beauty of that seed and like the close up of it and seeing her and her reaction to it, and then what we see with that later and the visual metaphors from the final episode where we get the flashback and we see her blowing on the dandelion with Nicholas, and it all comes full circle, and it's all very meaningful and symbolic for death, rebirth, the cycle of life, these just things that we again all have to deal with, this the nature of life and death laid bare in front of us, and the cruelty of it. The show should not be able to be as poignant as it is. It's a silly,
It's silly.
campy
Yeah.
Marvel show, but they somehow pull from the depths of like our hearts, and just they pull it off. They somehow are able to be all these things, and really, really, really be what's the word? Like sincerely, emotional, dramatic,
Yeah,
not
that's a
so
good word.
tying into our humanity and whatnot on this fun Halloween show. I'm probably overstating it a little bit,
No,
but
you're not
you're
though. No, because
loved it.
this moment was like it. You
Mhm.
could put that 10 seconds with like any actor doing anything. I know it sounds like hyperbole, it really does, but like
Mhm.
the 10
Yeah,
seconds of her by herself with his little seed, like
yeah,
begging the seed to grow. It was
yeah.
like,
It's
wow.
beautiful.
It really was. As now Agatha has grown something from nothing without power. As the place starts to fill up with rocks, she walks through with some trees here, and she's back in like Westview, and she's in her yard. And now the skies are black as Rio cackles from above. Congratulations, my love. I'm sorry I didn't have a ribbon for you to run through. And we get our standoff now between Rio and Agatha. Rio asks, "Where's the kid? He was supposed to surrender himself. That means you're coming with me. I'm thinking death by 1,000 cuts." She blasts the glass from the house into Agatha, and she has all these little shards of glass and little cuts all over her body, little slashes, which look just painful as can be. And then in this serious moment, we flash over to the neighbors of Westview, and they're like, "Oh no, this is happening again! Oh crap!" They're just staring up at the sky like, "Uh-oh, here we go again."
Full on like Wizard of Oz tornado, like the sky is like all dark and discolored. I love the connection there. It's definitely evoking the look and feel of Wizard of Oz there, as it has done so many times.
So Agatha begins to chant in Latin. She's using some of the spells and incantations and the witchcraft she learned along the road from Jen, from Lilia, from Alice, from Billy. So Rio kind of laughs. "Expel this evil? You're calling me evil? I'm the natural order of all things, baby, and you love me." Rio screams, "You're a coward," as Agatha remembers what Lilia told her. When she says coward, hit the deck. So Agatha does. Rio still able to gain advantage on Agatha. Looks like she has Agatha kind of cornered. And Agatha is trying a last chance spell. And as it looks like poor Agatha is in a bad moment where Rio is about to end Agatha, here comes Wiccan to save the day. Now remember, Agatha's powerless right now. She does not have the ability to fight back Rio. That's why Wiccan Billy comes in to save the day. He knows what he has to do. He has to give Agatha some of his power in order for this to be a fair fight. And I thought that this moment really kind of encapsulates a lot of what the show is about, where Billy has to trust Agatha in order for them to move along. And Agatha has a moment where she can go do one of two things. Like she can drain the life out of Billy, completely suck the life out of him. She can kill this kid and she can go on with what she's been doing for hundreds of years, stealing power from other witches and using that power to go on. But there's a moment where we see her draining the power from him and he kind of looks over at her and she stops. She does not do to him what she's done to hundreds of witches throughout history.
Yeah. And it's I'm still a little bit unsure about her motivations, like moment to moment in this whole sequence. You know, I'm not really sure when she 100%
realizes, right? Or like comes full circle, or is she good all along? Was she planning this all along? Was this her plan to just get a little bit of power and then she could help? Or was there a moment when she saw him struggling on the ground and it kind of hit her?
And I lean toward that. I think
Me too. I think so.
I lean toward her being somewhere in the middle, like kind of ambivalent. Like she wants to survive and she wants what's best for her. And she still kind of cares for Billy, I think, in this moment. But maybe if he died or she had to give him up to death, she's okay with that.
If it's her or him, it's always going to be her that wins, right? That kind of a thing.
At that moment, yes.
I think so too.
Until she decides otherwise, I think.
I agree.
But yeah, I think she's kind of in the middle, just like you know, playing whatever cards she sees are the best in that moment. And when he gives her that energy, she does have a choice in that moment. She's tempted to, but she cares enough about him and you know, the memory of her son and that connection between the two, even if it's just in her head, that she doesn't take it that far. And I think she stops herself there. But I think she's still a little bit ambivalent after that point, because she kind of gives him up to Rio, right? I
Yeah,
think she's
she does.
sincere there, and I
She
think
does.
that's where you can kind of go either way and say, okay, she kind of conning Rio here. Does she know what she's going to do? And then even Billy doesn't know, but then she reveals it to everybody, in the end that she's kind of sacrificing herself. Or does what Billy says to her really change things? I lean toward that. I
Me
think
too, because it's almost like she's become so used to doing it this way, right? This
yeah,
was just like her habit. She's done this forever, over and over, that it's like she's she's kind of numb. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
reflex, and she's kind of numb to like, oh, I'm killing another person here. But
right,
when he is actually able to get into her head afterwards,
hmm
when it feels like she is just going to take all the power from him,
yeah,
he gets inside of her brain, and
yeah,
he speaks with her. First, he asks her, "Don't take it all,"
yeah,
and Agatha
hmm
tells Billy, we can't fight death. It should be me. This is where they have a moment where it looks like they're gonna each sacrifice themselves for the other, and then
hmm
Agatha says, "Okay, you're gonna do it. That's fine. Take him.
yeah,
Take him."
yeah, yeah,
Right. So even
exactly.
then, when we think she's come full circle, she still hasn't. She tricks us one more time again before finally sacrificing herself. Like at this moment, when she says
Yeah,
take him, she is full evil. Like she's
yeah,
like, this
yeah,
is about as evil as we've seen, as like, yep, she gives him up. And Billy's confused. At that moment, he
yeah,
really thought, I came here, I gave her my power, I saved her life. She's absolutely going to be on my side now, and she's going to be helping me. But he still has to give her a nudge. He still has to get into her head, and that's what changes her mind. When he says, Agatha,
yeah.
Agatha, I know you can hear me. Is this how Nikki died? And that hits her.
Or tracks. Yeah, yeah, it's home.
So
Yeah,
she actually stops, and she walks over and
mhm,
gives a huge kiss of death to Rio.
yeah,
She sacrifices herself. She falls to her death. So the debt has been paid. This was a moment where we did go back and forth in about 1 minute with
yeah,
Agatha, right? Like she played like up and down. I don't know if I like it or dislike it. It just a lot happened in this moment when normally you get the moment when somebody has their baby face turn, right? They come full
mhm,
circle and you have a little bit of that. Even when that was happening, we still didn't know. She would go evil, she would
yeah,
go back. So they never wanted to give us as the audience the full knowledge of what Agatha was really thinking inside. We never really
yeah.
knew exactly what her motivations were, as you were pointing out.
Yeah, yeah, you know what? I think she oscillates so much between good and evil, depending on what serves her in the moment. So I guess that kind of leans towards evil, but it's yeah, I think she didn't even know. They kept it from us, but I think true to the character, I don't think Agatha really knew who she was and what she wanted ultimately, or what she was going to do. I guess I should say, until she did it, until it all clicked for her. And I think that, like we kind of touched on earlier, whenever Nikki is brought up, it's just such an open wound that it cuts right to her core. And so that in that moment, him mentioning Nikki just brought her right back to that place of like, I'll do anything to save my boy. And that connection to him, how she'd already mentally connected, Nikki to Billy, even though they're not the same. That was enough to really put her over the edge and say, in that mind state of like, yes, I will. I remember. I will do anything I can to save my boy, and this is the closest thing I can do right now to save my boy. And there was something really powerful about that, and I think it all came down to how well they, they how well Catherine Hahn was able to embody that character, and how well the writers really wrote that character. Because it wouldn't have meant as much if they had given Agatha this, you know, this heart all along. If they really tipped, their hand and showed us that
Yeah, it's
she
like the
was
Grinch, right?
really
It's a
good.
little Grinchy at the end. You know what I mean?
Exactly. We get that change, the unexpected, and we see, the heart grow however many times the Grinch grows, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's it's that much more meaningful because we weren't sure we saw that in her, and then she
Yep.
proved it to herself and to us at the same time.
So the debt has now been paid. Billy is released by Rio. I even like the little things like
Mhm.
the walk of shame that he has after. I don't know why. Just it's like this
Yeah.
crazy chaos happens, and then there's this moment of like levity
Yeah.
where they're back in the real world, and
Yeah,
he
yeah.
has to like walk back through the townspeople and get back in his car and drive back home. And just this contrast from like this crazy battle in the sky with these witches going at it, and then it's like now this kid just got to walk back to his car and drive back home.
It's so it's being brought down to earth in such a literal way, and walk
Yes.
is the perfect way to put it. I mean, it looks like he had a rough night. He's completely
Yes.
wearing the same clothes he wore the last night. And the I love that you mentioned he gets into the car. It's such a specific thing of like being brought down to earth. He doesn't fly home, right?
No.
We've just seen that he can do that, but he gets into his
And
car.
we just saw Jen do that too. Jen got up and flew away when she left,
Yeah. Exactly. So like we see that really underscores that he's going back to regular life, down to earth. He's a kid again. He has these powers and whatnot, but he's carrying all that weight of that, the experience he just had on the road, back with him to normal civilian teenage life. And that's it visually really captures that so well. And I love the moment when he comes in reunited with his parents, the concern that they had because he's been gone, whole 24 hours, which I think New Rockstars or somebody maybe suggested there was some time dilation there happening within the hex. Maybe they were there for a little bit longer than 24 hours, although everything did go pretty back to back within within that story. So I could see it actually
pick it up like right where we left off, right? So we weren't skipping a whole lot of time.
Yeah, there could be time dilation. Maybe they're in there for a week, but it was only a day in the real world, or maybe it was just a 1-to-1, time match. So remains to be seen, but they did get a lot of stuff in on that journey, nevertheless, whether it took 24 hours or a week.
Those loving parents were so excited to see him, Rebecca and Jeff.
Yeah.
And William showers. He goes into his room, and this is when he realizes, as he looks around, that he created the Witch's Road. And we see a montage of different flashbacks kind of put it all together. All of the trials, all the pieces of the road were manifested by Billy's chaos magic. Little cuts of, things that happen in episode 1 or things that happen in episode 2. And we get to the point where Billy's sort of looking at himself, and he then realizes it and then gets scared, boo, by a ghost that's right behind him. We don't see her yet until episode 9, but we hear the laughing of Ghost Agatha. So we've now.
Sorry, I was just going to say every episode, previous ones and this one did it so well, just ends on this really great high point with a music cue that really makes you want to watch the next one. And this one,
absolutely,
I felt like that about every previous episode, and they did such a good job of doing that and keeping me wanting to watch the next one. And then they nailed it on this one. So like the back-to-back nature of it, where we end with that boo, we kind of know what it is, and then it's like, yeah, give me that finale now. What's going to happen with this? Because we really felt like we wrapped a lot up there. It felt like a big finale, but then you get this boo at the end, which opens up this whole door for this really awesome epilogue that we can.
Honestly, they could have, and they have in previous type things, that could have been the end of the show.
Yeah.
And then had one post-credit scene to tell us what's coming next. But we get a lot more than that, which is really great for us as viewers. But a quick little list of some of the things in his room. Mushrooms, fungi, Rocky Horror Picture Show, a Buffy poster, Billie Eilish, Poltergeist 2, Jennifer's Body, Evanescence, the Lorna Wu poster, Wizard of Oz figurines and like a lot of like trees and leaves and spooky, artwork and stuff. So
same color leaves. Yeah, I loved it though. Yeah, those details in the production design, and the way that they were revealed in that sequence. A lot of people pointed out the similarities to Usual Suspects, that iconic final scene where it all comes together and you realize who was Kaiser Sose all along, and how the story
the
got kind of
reveal,
put together. Feel that twist. It's great. And so this, touches on that and does a little bit of that, but it's also, like we've mentioned all throughout, very much Wizard of Oz inspired. I love that it had a Buffy poster on the wall. I think it was the episode Once More with Feeling, which was the musical episode of Buffy. So I love that was a groundbreaking, like, kind of standalone episode of Buffy. I've mentioned, other episodes of Buffy that were groundbreaking, that I was reminded of. The Salem 7, I said, reminded me of the gentleman in the episode Hush, which is a really interesting, groundbreaking episode of Buffy where there's basically no dialogue. And so this episode, Once More with Feeling, was essentially an entire episode that's a musical, and it's motivated within the plot by there being some kind of demon that takes over the town, and everybody can only, sing from there. So there's this great, like, diegetic, driven by the plot reason for there to be this really cool, kind of meta twist on what we're seeing within the story. And that's exactly what we get, in both WandaVision and Agatha All Along. You get these takes on these different types of TV shows in WandaVision, and that's extended into Agatha All Along with the Mayor of Easttown opening, and then all the references to, witches throughout, pop culture that we get, and how that fits directly within the story here. So we're getting these, like, meta references, but they work on a very, like, diegetic story plot level as well. And that's so much fun when you can do something like that.
So we now move to episode 9, Maiden Mother Crone, and we pick up with a flashback right off the bat. 1750, Agatha, pregnant in the woods, lakeside. She's trying to deal with the pain. She comes to a tree and she's biting. She cuts a lemon open. I love the way she slices it against the tree and then bites it.
Yeah, I believed it.
She's just gnawing on this lemon, trying to deal with the pain of the pregnancy. And she sees Rio, a very young Rio, dressed in green. She looks like a green Little Red Riding Hood. Like her getup right here. And death has come for Agatha's baby. Just very sad to think about it, that Agatha is pregnant, but won't even be able to really have this child. She begs death for time. Please, you do this and I will hate you forever. Please let him live. Please, my love. She begs. Yeah. So we know right there that there's a history between these two. We don't really see more of it than this. I guarantee in a future setting now they'll get there. But I actually heard interviews with some of the creators after, and they were even saying they didn't realize how much of like a fault, like how insane and intense the want for Aubrey and Catherine Hahn was going to be. Like they didn't realize all of us are creepy, horny people out here just wanting to see these two get together that bad. So they said, like, we didn't, had we known that, we may have leaned into more of it. But they basically said we didn't want to get so much into their backstory that it took away from the moments that Agatha was going to have with her son in this episode. And I can completely understand that aspect of it. Yeah,
agreed. Yeah, because that's a different story. I mean, there's so much there. They were together it's implied for a very long time, I think. But it's still very unclear as to, how that worked, how they met, what their dynamic was.
It would have been hard to like just scratch the surface of that and not get more into it.
Yeah, you couldn't just do that without really spending so much time and devoting the whole episode to that. And that's clearly not what they had in mind for this. They stuck with something that was very poignant, very emotional, and grounded in a very human way. I mean, the center of the emotional stakes of this episode is really a mother and a son, and dealing with the mortality of your own child, and the uncertainty of that, and or I should say both the certainty and uncertainty of it, and just the torture of that, and the pain and the torment of dealing with that, and the loss there. So that's plenty to chew on. And it wasn't what I expected either. That was another thing the show really did well, was kind of subverting your expectations, but not in a way that felt like it was giving you like a bait and switch.
Like it was just doing it for the surprise, right? Not for that reason.
All motivated by the themes and the characters and the story they were trying to tell, as opposed to just shock value, or just like surprise for the sake of surprise. It really tapped into something deeper about the characters and their motivations, and more universal too, than I think we'd be able to relate to if we were just following a witch on her like lover's journey over the course of decades with death. I think the more you kind of dig deep into that, the more questions get raised, and the more that becomes the focus of it, and the more removed you become from relatable human experience. But they instead chose to really focus on like just a love of a mother for her son, and a mother that's not perfect, very flawed. You think about mothers who maybe are drug addicts or criminal in some way, but they still really care and love for their child, and they're conflicted in that way. That's kind of the dynamic that they captured with this, and I thought there was something very realistic and moving about it.
And there's something very real to the moment when Agatha is begging Rio, please, because we've all done this with a spouse, right? When you're at that moment when you're like begging them, please help me this time, just this once, please do this one more time, I promise it won't happen again. And Rio looks at her and goes, okay, I can give you time, I can offer you time. How much time, we don't know, because Rio is quickly gone. But you can actually see there's this moment, and then we'll get there in a minute when very sadly Nikki passes away and death comes for him. Rio actually redirects the child to go back to Agatha and give her a kiss goodbye, and give her 2 kisses, almost like one from me and one from you. And I thought that was like a really beautiful, like, for as evil as death is, it's the little moments like this where she gives Agatha more time with her son that she didn't have to. And she lets the kid go back and give his mom a little kiss goodbye, which is something Agatha will never see, will never know. But we can still see the love that Rio still has, that there's still something there between the two of them.
Yeah, and there's an interesting dynamic with Rio, and it borders on a complaint or a critique for me, and that's that I don't get a sense of, is she good or bad? I feel like they want her to be this neutral character, but then she ends up being kind of bad, in that final show. She's jealous, and she's like, death by a thousand cuts. She's like an abusive lover at that point. So she's very much an evil character there. But I think the idea of her character is that she's this more of like this force of nature, this neutral thing. She's life and death at the same time, because the nature of like rebirth and whatnot. But also the way she appears to the characters varies, right? So with Nikki, she's, like you pointed out earlier, she's younger, and I don't know that that's because
not as scary looking either.
She's not as scarier, and she's more of a younger maiden, right? So I'm wondering, is that because it takes place, a long time ago? If so, that doesn't kind of make that much sense to me, because we're talking about a couple of centuries compared to like the existence of like man,
time, thousands of years, right? So, millions of years
at all, like on that time scale.
Or is this like a Pennywise thing, right? Where she takes the figure because she doesn't want it to be as scary for the child. at that
or something similar to that. Maybe it's not even like a choice. Like maybe she's not reflecting the child, like what the child wants to see or would be scared. But maybe it's just like if it's a child, she's younger. If it's
Yeah,
an
absolutely. I
older
like that.
she's older
I like that better.
and so like when we see Lilia, when Lilia sees her, she's like the skull, like the skeleton version.
Yes.
So like Lilia's been around for a long time. So maybe that's there's almost like a picture of Dorian Gray kind of aspect of like how death looks
Yes.
and how long you've been around for.
I like
Just
that.
following. But yeah, I think that's interesting. They didn't explain why she looks different, but that could be a viable reason.
So Agatha now continues with this painful childbirth, and the baby is born. She looks truly happy. She looks at peace as she says that she spoke no spell. She said no incantation. You were made from scratch. And she's happy. But days later, she walks around with the young baby. He's crying. He seems to be bothered. He seems to be sick. And she comes across a group of women singing. And they ask her, first, is the baby okay? Or is he doing well? She says they need to eat. And they're now invited and welcomed into the circle. And as Agatha walks inside their circle, the group of witches are very kind to her. She smiles at them, and then she attacks. And we see her do. She's got the same sort of game plan, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
she's an athlete who has one move that always works. So she just keeps going. She keeps going to that move. She doesn't really need to change it up. She yells and screams and like badmouths the witches to force them to use their power on her so she can take it from them, because she cannot just go and steal power from them. The rule with her is she needs to be blasted in order to absorb the power and take it. So she actually will do this throughout hundreds and hundreds of years, throughout many, many covens and many women. And this was the first time we see her doing this right after her baby is born.
Yeah. And it's really diabolical too, because these people, like, they trust her, they invite her in, and she's, this young mother, so they mean well. They're just trying to help out, a young mother and a baby, and immediately she just turns on them and uses that goodwill against them, and takes everything they have, including their lives. It's evil, like downright evil. And the fact that she's involving her child in it and like kind of using him and corrupting him in this,
like a pawn.
I think that's at the heart of why she later in this episode she says that she can't face him.
She's so embarrassed about what she's done.
Yeah, there's competing theories here too, because she says that we don't know necessarily that it's him, that it's Nicholas. It could be the father. There's people who think that maybe the father was Mephisto, and that she made some kind of a deal with that, or maybe she sold her soul to Mephisto, so she would have to face Mephisto in the afterlife. That's why she becomes a ghost. That's jumping ahead a little bit here and speculating, of course, but yeah, it's I think that it's really at the heart, though, of her character, is that she's carrying this guilt about she had this innocent thing that she had true love for, but then with her own nature and her own circumstances and her choices, she, went about corrupting this thing. And I like how, in these small moments that we get with her and Nicholas, throughout this episode, we start to see that the corrupting influence, there's some resistance there that comes from Nicholas
once he starts to realize what's happening, right?
Exactly. And so that's that dynamic. I think that leads me to think that that really is what's happening ultimately here with her character and the crisis of conscience around what she's done. I don't think she feels bad for killing all these people, but
no,
for corrupting him and involving him, I think that's where she really carries the moral weight of it all and the guilt.
I agree, because there is something to her taking power from the witches gives her son more life, more energy, more power, because we actually see it right away when he's a baby. Right after she does this, that power that she steals from the witches almost provides like a healing energy to him.
Yeah.
And it gives him another day, almost.
She,
right? Like they're
she
kind of
makes
telling us that.
Yeah, and it's just another way that she's corrupting him. Like he only gets to live and exist in a sense because of this, these evil acts that are being done. And
And
so what does that mean for his eternal soul and
and
whatnot?
in
I
her
hope.
head, she's a very Robin Hood kind of like justification here for it too, right? Like she doesn't, I think she thinks she's doing what's right for her son, which she kind of is. She's trying to keep him alive by stealing all this power from the people around
Yeah,
her. But as we keep saying, like when the child gets to the age of like 6 or 7 and he can understand now right and wrong, he doesn't even want to be a part of this anymore.
yeah, exactly. And there might be even another element of justification that she's using, morally, to do this. In that,
Yes.
maybe she's like, yeah, I'm killing people, but I'm killing witches, and yeah, I'm a witch too. But like, it's almost like Blade killing vampires. Like I'm the good one, and they're all bad.
Dexter, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
he's going after the other murderers, so you kind of like feel for him. Yeah.
yeah. So that's not entirely sound, given that they've kind of presented witches in this universe as not like uniformly evil. That's almost like a societal, cultural twisting of what their actual what their actual reputation. Like it's more of a cultural
Yes.
that just got like put on them, through movies and whatnot. So I don't know how strong that really works. If she was really using that as a justification, but it could kind of make sense that she would, that might have been part of it, at least. Maybe she's a complicated person, so like maybe part of the motivation is like, yeah, it's saving my son, and the others, like, they're not that good people anyway, so they were going to go use their powers for selfish things or for evil things, or what are witches known for in folklore, like luring kids into houses and cooking
Maybe they were
them.
going to steal my power before I stole theirs, right? Like,
Or she thinks that too. Yeah, exactly. Everyone ran for themselves. So she's living like Highlander out there, just like there can be only one. Which
you're right.
however she decided for herself. But I think it's probably a mix of reasons and motivations and things she told herself to justify it.
So we're now in 1756. Nicholas is now 6 years old, and we see young Nicholas in a village, very thin, frail boy, obviously sickly. And he gets noticed by a local woman who wants to help him. He then steals from her and runs back to Agatha. So this is like their con. He will walk in, steal things, lure women back to the house so that way his mom can drain all their power. And we actually see him, he runs back into the house. They've got like a whole like scene that they've worked out where Agatha comes out and pretends to yell at him. He goes right through the house, and when a woman follows in, Agatha can then attack, steal the power from the woman. They have this entire thing all set up, which as you see the process of it happening, it's really sad for this kid. I mean, he's just a 6-year-old kid having to watch his mom repeatedly murder people over and over and over again, to where he even asks her after, Mama, why do you kill witches?
Right.
To survive. Couldn't we stay with the witches and survive with them? No, because then they will try to kill us. If you want to survive, get used to this feeling. That's I as a parent, I gotta say, because like in a very meta sense, like there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world right now. I like have a tough time with some of this as a parent because I'm trying to teach my kid like very basic right and wrong, like what's good and what's bad. And when there's like, it's hard as a parent to like layer it to your child because you're just trying to teach them like this is good, this is bad. When you do this, you should be sorry. You need to apologize. Like so you're trying to show them that, and then when you like look around the rest of the world, it's not consistently that way, and it's confusing to a child. It's like, why isn't that person apologizing, or why wasn't that bad? I think when you see the kid, when like she has to tell her kid to like deal with it, suck it up, like this is life, like that hit me like really hard when she says, if you want to survive, get used to this feeling. And you see the poor child like having to come to terms with it.
Yeah.
This is the world. It hit me hard now just because this kid is 6 and my son, I said I was going to be 5 next week. And I'm like, Milo, no, you can't do that. Why? And he asks you, and there's sometimes when your kid will ask you and you can't really give them a good explanation for something. It's just the way that it is, like that's just the way the world is. Like, man, there was like a lot in here where this poor little kid sees his mom and then realizes, okay. And then as like, is as emotional and as like powerful as this moment was for me, you then remember that a child can kind of quickly get over these kinds of things. And like 2 seconds later, he's singing, walk the road. I walk the windy road. Like it's a bunch of stuff happening here in just a few seconds. And it felt very real to me. And I think the kid who plays Nicholas does a really good job because he doesn't have a ton of dialogue or a ton to do, but you can see it on his face that he's sick, that he's struggling, that he's sad, that he loves his mom. And the thing that Agatha kind of picks out at the end of this episode, I believe, is what she said the similarities between Billy and her son are, Nicholas, that they always saw the best in her. They always wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, even after she's confessing and murdering and this. Like they know that there's good in there with her, so they always see the best in her. And that was what she saw in Billy that reminded her of her son Nicholas, and maybe why she, at the very end, sacrificed herself, because there was this similarity that is much evil and bad, and as many hundreds of women that she's just murdering. These people always saw some good in her.
And I think that makes her uncomfortable on some level. She feels unworthy of that. And that's, if it is, in fact, Nikki that she's talking about when later on she says, I can't face him. I think that's part of it. Like she has only known the admiration from him. And now he's had, conceivably, if he's in the afterlife, maybe he's able to see everything from like, bird's eye view. He knows that she's like kind of betrayed his soul, and used him. And so she knows that he's seen, or assumes that he's seen like the real her, like the raw, the dark side of her. And how can she face him now that he's seen that side of her? And I think she feels so much shame over that. And I love you pointed out what she says to Nikki back then about getting used to that feeling. She says almost word for word the same thing to Billy later on, I think, when Billy's talking about how people died and it was all his fault and he's coming to terms with that. She says, get used to that feeling to him. So it's the same kind of thing. And it just, again, underscores that connection between the two, that mother-son kind of feeling, even though they're not literally mother-son.
So we actually see that the song, the Ballad of the Witch's Road, was created by Nicky. It was a song that him and his mom would just sing together when they walked around. I mean, you do this with your kid. You make up little songs, you silly things. You make up, words and phrases, and they're walking around together, like finishing the song for each other. I thought this like montage of scenes in some of these, I'm getting goosebumps kind of talking about it because it's beautiful with these two mother-daughter, with this mother-son walking around together, like laughing. She's teaching him lessons. Okay, I can cast illusions. I can control a feeble mind. I can move objects using my will, but I cannot heal you. I cannot protect you from what's coming, and I cannot divine when she will return. And he asks her, who will return? She thinks about it, and she's bothered. Like, she doesn't want to even think more about it. She snaps back out of it and starts singing again with her kid. So it's like you see the torment that she's going through because she knows that this boy is sick. She knows one of these days he's not going to wake up. You just want to keep pushing it down and down and down the road. Unfortunately, the time is coming soon. But Nikki is basically the the origin of the Witches Road song. Another thing that this beautiful song that she shared with her son, she takes it and she makes it this trap for women.
Yeah.
And she uses it to prey on them for the next couple hundred years. Another thing that she's probably ashamed or embarrassed if she were to ever meet her son and he sings the song to her and what that song has now become, and what it now means. So I think we get this big montage of Nikki and Agatha together singing, laughing, creating this song, mother and son, really, really sweet moments before we get to
in the daylight, in the sun, and we see images of like fields and green, and there's some slow motion, and I just love the camera work and the cinematography and that sequence, and it captures that innocence and the beauty of their time together, even with the juxtaposition of the like evil stuff that they're doing along the way.
So we're now maybe a little older Nikki. He does not look good. He's in a tavern and he's performing, he's singing, and all the women around are laughing as he's singing and dancing. He looks very like Tiny Tim right here from Scrooge, like real sickly, real pale, but he has this genuine sweet energy to him where he seems like just such a lovable, loving boy. And as they're clapping and cheering for him, they ask him, "Young boy, wherever did you come upon such a curious song? Let us help you." He says, "I thank you, but no, my mother needs me home." So it's even gotten too much for him. Like, he doesn't want to do this anymore. He likes to go in there and sing and dance and interact with people, but he doesn't want to lure them back and kill them again, have his mom continue to murder people repeatedly. He has a good heart. He runs off into the woods, and mom finds him, and there's a moment where they reconcile. They prepare for bed, and he says to her, just to kind of appease her, "Mama, we can kill more witches tomorrow. I promise." It's like, this poor kid doesn't want to upset anyone. He's just such a sweet, sweet child. And as Agatha sings to him and they lay down, this is the final time that she will lay him down, because in the middle of the night, Rio, death, comes for him. So again, really powerful stuff here. Like, you really feel it when I was explaining how the moment that I really liked was Rio, Nikki and his mom Agatha are asleep. Agatha is not woken up. Nikki notices death and gets up and walks towards death, but she stops him and she tells him to go back and give his mom a kiss, and he gives her 2 kisses. And you were kind of hitting on this. I don't know if Nikki knows Rio, but he feels really comfortable with her. Like, they almost give you the sense that like he's seen her before, or we know that his mom and her have this history, but he's very comfortable with her, and she's not here to scare him. She's here to just do the job that she has to do at this point. Like, he's unfortunately, his time has come. She's already given him borrowed time. She now has to take him back. Really, like, beautiful scene here. And then Agatha wakes up crying. Like, all of this hit home very, very much to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's this beautiful, sequence where Rio comes, and it's a little bit supernatural, and Nikki goes off with her. It evokes these feelings of otherworldly, the great beyond, all that kind of stuff. And then we get this, the light of day, the morning, when Agatha wakes up and it dawns on her that her child has passed away in his sleep, and it's so raw, and you get this emotional, raw human reaction again from in the context of this story about supernatural witches, in an MCU story, but it feels just like a mom who just lost her child, and there's nothing more
like relatable, I think, to a human being than that type of loss. And there's nothing more profound and moving than, thinking about the person that you love the most and care about the most, and them being taken away from you forever. No chance of getting it back. I mean, it's these universal themes that we all deal with and we all encounter them, and that's as heavy as it can get, and as emotional as it can get. This show really captured it in a very down to earth way. And again, I want to bring up Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because that moment right there really captured to me the feeling that was created in another groundbreaking episode of Buffy called The Body. And that's an episode where Buffy Summers comes home from school and her mom's dead on the couch. And they do like a long take where it's no music, and it's very lived in and human, and it just gives us that raw human emotion. And that's on, similarly, a genre show about vampires and vampire slayers and demons and all these over the top things. There's campy elements. It's a fun show, but they took the time, the effort, and really drilled down onto this one topic, this one theme. Again, universal stuff: life and death, family members, parents, losing a parent, losing a child. This is something we all have to deal with on some level, one way or another. But anytime we see it, it's going to feel fresh, raw, and impactful, because it's just, there's no bigger thing than that in life, right? There's no more weighty relationship or a thing that can happen to your relationship than to like the finality of that type of loss. Our own morbidity and mortality. It's we can't shake it. We can't hide from it. It's just the nature of life. And the fact that this show is able to touch on it in such a profound and impactful way, I think just shows you it's a testament to what a great series this was, and like how high it ranks in terms of all the MCU stuff. And I think that this one scene here and the choice that they made to do that takes it head and shoulders ahead of a lot of what we've seen in previous MCU stuff. I might be overstating.
No, you're not though. You're not. I'm telling you, because the more every time we talk about it and every time I watched it back, there's few things that make you feel these feels. Like actually, I mean, it's hard to do.
We're parents too, so anytime you bring up like a kid,
a child like this, yeah,
like, I can tap into that very quickly, and like, because that feeling, that fear is in the back of your mind. Anytime you hug your kid, part of you is going, I might lose you one day. I can never lose you.
When you talk about it, you feel it kind of get it coming over your body, even. Right, you know what I mean? Like you feel it like starting to like the pins and needles starting to go through your body a little bit. You know what I mean? Like even just thinking about how scary and what that would feel like. And Catherine Hahn really portrays it. Like you see it on her when she wakes up and poor Nikki has passed away, and she weeps. And when she's first, she has a little burial of him.
Yeah.
And she's singing the song while she's crying to lay him to rest. I have always known this road is cruel and wild. And now she's changing the lyrics of the song. I bury my own heart here with you, my child.
Yeah.
If one be gone, we carry on. But every mile I go, with every bend beyond the end, your mother loves you so. And I just put so sad with a bunch of exclamation points as she cries slowly. Like
so sad.
It's these made up words. And she takes a lock of hair from Nikki and she places it in a locket that she keeps. And as she's wiping her eyes, she's approached by a young woman who hears Agatha singing. And the woman asks her about the Ballad of the Witch's Road. She said, I heard you singing of it. The road offers a prize worth the peril to the witches who are brave and true. You know the ballad, and I am in great need. Can you show me the way? And um, one thing that I've learned with grief through the years is you can never predict how someone's going to react coming out of a very emotional situation. Like we always just assume people are going to be sad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case a lot of the time. People react in their own ways. If you're younger, a lot of the time you get like rebellious, you get angry. You know, you're not as sad as you are sort of mad, and it comes through your behavior. You're not as loving as a person. You're just more of a bitter person overall. You could see Agatha. She was always a person who um wasn't good, but she could her son was the thing that would sort of keep her good and keep her grounded.
Right.
And when he's gone, there's just no controlling her at all anymore. I mean, she is just completely let loose. She's so upset with what had happened to her son that she's now taking it out on everybody else. And we see this incredible montage of like hundreds of years and little small things. Every snap to the next scene, she's wearing completely different clothing. She's in a completely different setup, something that would be very common to the time period. And so we see her 3 or 4 different times with different groups of women where she is doing the same thing. She trash talks them until they attack her. She steals their power. And man, we're looking at her body count through the years.
Yeah.
Hundreds, thousands of women and witches that she's killed. And I like that there's like a scene where she's wearing, it's like Victorian era. Then there's one where it's like a goth, like late 80s, early 90s, sort of grunge. And the montages that they do, they do a really good job with them. The way that like they did the same thing with the one with Nikki and her a little bit earlier. I thought seeing her get more and more powerful with all these different groups of women, and it leads us right to the point where she's in her basement with this new coven, with Jen, with Lilia, with Billy, with Alice. But she doesn't get the opportunity to do to them what she's done to all the other covens throughout history.
Yeah. I love the way it circles back and fits perfectly in. And even on the first pass round, we got the sense that that's what she was doing because Lilia calls her on it. She literally calls her in that moment of what she's going to do. So it wasn't like that was, this reveal was something that was just like a big twist at the end. Again, they planted seeds throughout and it fit so that now when you come back around to it, it fits together like perfectly like a puzzle. And that's what, they call this show. It's a puzzle box type show. Really, really paid off, on that front. So yeah, I thought it was really good. The music and the editing you kind of touched on there in that sequence, the music is just carrying over the Witches Road song, from one moment to the next, and the camera's sweeping around them in these like big circles, around the coven, all holding hands, and it just the cross cuts from like different periods of time, and how seamless that all feels, and how the music is just swelling and building. It's really dramatic and really interesting, and the song really works there. And now again to touch on this theme of like we're seeing something that we saw before, but now we're able to see it in like a new context and new eyes. Like we're hearing this song, "The Witch's Road," again, but it feels as fresh as it's ever felt because now we understand like how it started and the significance of how it changed and how we got to where we are. And yeah, this whole thing felt like so worthwhile. Like I really felt like this wasn't a detour that was just like, oh, let's get some exposition of the backstory. It was like it really put the whole picture together and connected all these dots in a satisfying way, a very satisfying way. And so
which a lot of the origin movies or origin stories or the scenes where we do that, like a lot of the time they're not this impactful. So where we don't directly see all of the little things and how much each of those, like the song has impacted what we see next. I thought the the writers and the people who created this show, they just knew what they were doing. They liked this show. It felt, of all of these shows and movies we've talked about recently, I only felt like one or two times that was like, yeah, maybe there was a scene that got cut from there. Or maybe
Right.
there was something more that got moved. I almost never felt that. And I think the few times that we felt it, it does feel jarring because everything else is so good,
Yeah.
so well set. The groundwork has been laid. And after all of this, we get back to Billy in his room, realizing he created all of this with Ghost Agatha. Agatha is now a ghost, laughing, cackling around, and Billy is confused. He's frustrated. He thought he was able to get rid of Agatha. Because remember, Billy, Jen, Alice, Lilia, 2 of them are dead, 2 of them are still alive, but those 4 have done an amazing job in saving the lives of hundreds to thousands of women in the future. Do you think about all of the women that Agatha has killed, stole power from through the years? They're doing a major service to the world, to society, in eliminating this murderer from the picture. Because I had heard some people say, like, oh, if the road is a figment of the imagination, does it feel like Lilia dying or Alice dying? Are those sacrifices even worth it? Absolutely. They all came together to save hundreds and thousands of future women that Agatha would have preyed upon. So those sacrifices were huge. And at this moment, Billy's kind of pissed off because why is Agatha still around? Why is she still here? She should be gone. I'm going to get rid of her once and for all. And that's his plan. Agatha tries to act nice. Hey, look, I did not sacrifice myself for you. I took a calculated risk. I'm figuring the rules here. We are all confused. Billy is very confused. But this is a very, like, Casper the Friendly Ghost. She has unfinished business. She doesn't want to cross over. She does not want to go to the afterlife yet because she actually says, I can't face him. She cannot face her son.
Yeah.
She even tells Billy here, the ballad was a trick. It was a con to lure other gullible witches. The song doesn't mean anything. It never did. The road wasn't real until you made it real.
Yeah. And I still wonder, like I said, was that witch's road, something that existed in another universe and they just manifested into this one? With obviously Billy's influence, everything in his room helped to shape, how it looked and appeared to them. But yeah, who knows? Like, I would love to see more Witch's Road down the road, in the MCU, and have that be kind of a surprise to these characters that, like, oh yeah, it was real after all. It does, exist in the multiverse.
So Agatha and Billy start to realize that if the road, Billy's kind of doing the mental math. If I made the road, that means I killed them. I'm a murderer. I killed Alice, Lilia. But Agatha actually makes Billy feel a little bit better here. She says, well, I killed Alice. And Lilia, that was her choice. Mrs. Davis, who? Agatha still doesn't remember. Mrs. Hart, Mrs. Davis. She didn't even belong on the road, and she's dead because of me. Oh, you mean the gardening lady? Oh, okay. Agatha does try to make him feel better because she says, don't give yourself too much credit. If you actually do the math, you saved a life, because I was going to kill all of them, and Jen is still alive. So you're up 1 here. As we then see Jen pop up through the ground, which is like a really cool scene where her fingers kind of pull her up out from under the underground outside of Westview. She looks around kind of quickly and then flies off. So anyone who felt like Jen, or there was more to Jen, or we were going to get a little more from Jen, I can understand wanting more there. I do feel like we'll get it at some point. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that she makes it out alive and the others don't, and we're just never going to see her again. She will pop up somewhere, but in this story, I can understand if some people felt like we didn't get as much from Jen as we may have gotten from some of the other characters, or we wanted to get a little bit more of her origins and backstory.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think I'm okay. I'm okay with the way that they did it because the characters that passed away, they had more of their arcs explored and more of their
It's a great
backstory
point.
explored.
They're full circle, like they finished their story almost.
Yeah, and then with her, they touched on it, they established it, but clearly they have designs for this character. Big picture stuff down the road. We're gonna circle back to her. I don't think her arc has been completely explored. I think she's gonna have additional arcs, and they're not being subtle about that. They're letting us know her story will continue. I believe so. I'm looking forward to that.
Billy returns to Westview to try and banish Agatha's ghost. She does not want to cross over. She doesn't want to face her son. She doesn't want to face the guilt. We assume her son. She says, I don't want to face him. And as you pointed out, him could mean a few different things. Maybe it's a father figure. Maybe it's a Mephisto. We think that it's her son who she's embarrassed, ashamed at some of the things that she has done. So Billy draws the chalk outline. He's back in the basement where they went down the witch's road. He begins a banishing spell on Agatha. And he says, you don't get another chance. Time to go towards the light or into Rio's toxic embrace or wherever you deserve to spend eternity. I don't really care anymore. Initially, Agatha's kind of laughing. You think you can just send me into the afterlife with an incantation and a personal item? Aha, she kind of scoffs over at him. But as he goes on, she now is starting to get really upset. She does not want to go. And she wants to stay. She's not finished or come to terms with how she's going to encounter the afterlife. And Billy's starting to get angry. Why are you still here? Why won't you just die? That's when she tells us, I can't face him. Nicholas. Billy says it, and he kind of realizes Agatha's pain, and she picks up her brooch that has the lock of hair of Nicholas. She kind of looks at it, and Billy says, I'm sure he would forgive you for whatever you did, which was really sweet. Like, he doesn't even know, but it was very, very sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough, man. I love that moment where, we find out she can move stuff. That's an interesting, little development there too. And it happens at a great point, where she moves the brooch just a little bit, and that's going to be important. If she's going to be around, we need to understand how she can affect things, and if she can pick stuff up, specifically that brooch, that tells us that she'll be able to do stuff moving forward. And I also heard people, and I thought this too, they compared her to Gandalf the White, like a new version of an existing character that's kind of evolved into a higher form.
And now her purpose is to help and guide others. It's not as much about herself.
Right. Yeah, good point.
We see her as this sort of spiritual guide now to help Billy. And that's what she remembers about her son, that when you say things like that, you remind me of him, that Billy and Nikki always saw the best in Agatha. They always knew that inside there, she could be a good person. She just can't be that person all the time. She's inconsistent. She's very, very flawed. Maybe being a ghost suits you. Spirit as my guide, Billy jokes. We could make a good team, you and me, Coven 2. Which was another small point, right? Because earlier in the season, when Agatha sang the words wrong and everyone tried to correct her saying that it was Coven True, we actually know that it initially was Coven 2 because it was just her and Nikki. So in her head, it's always Coven 2. Little small things like that they planted seeds earlier in the season, or they gave you little teasers and they were able to fulfill or dot the I's and cross the T's on so many of those little things.
And let's talk about how that wasn't even really that little. How those moments are, because it doesn't just tee up this moment here, but it also, like, in the moment, it was funny. There was a funny little conflict where they were arguing. It also um, hinted at that she might be making stuff up, that she hasn't been on the road yet. So it gave us that as viewers, like that little tidbit of information, like, oh, maybe she's being deceitful here or whatever. And then it comes back around to this, and it's also this very poignant, like, heartfelt, kind of meaningful moment, because we get this revelation of, like, oh no, it really was two. She was correct. She wrote the damn thing, so she was right all along. And, like, so it's these little details, but they work on multiple levels, and not only that, they work backward. Like, you come back to them, you rewatch something, and then now it has a new significance, or it's special, it's meaningful in a way that it wasn't the first time around. And it makes, when the reveal happens, it feels that much more earned and that much more important, impactful to the story, because you're like, oh yeah, they said that thing all the way back earlier on. And yeah, that's the type of show that, like, I can really sink my teeth into. And that's why I think people were comparing it to Lost and some of the other great puzzle box shows, because of, all those little details and the payoffs, and how they can feel very disparate, they can feel unconnected, and then once they connect, it feels like, oh yeah, that's what it was all along. Like, yeah, you guys, like, totally had me, and you took me on this journey here, and you made me focus and drill down on these little details that could be a forgotten thing, but end up being, like, the thing that you go back to, and you're like, wow, that show just was firing on all cylinders. That story, like, was so well put together, with all these little details. It pays off. The more you pay attention, the more you think about it, the more they give you in payoff at the end. So yeah, just the architecture of the show, so well done, so well structured, and they pulled it off. Great finale.
As we finish up, Agatha reminds Billy, I do tend to kill my coven members, but Billy laughs. So do I. It's the names of Sharon, Alice, Lilia arrive on the floor, almost like tombstone writings on a grave. They pop up, and a door portal opens, and Agatha and Billy walk off together. One door closes, another door opens. They go off to find Tommy. They go down the Witch's Road, and we hear the song play one more time. It's a good ending. It really is. I mean, it leaves us with now a new character, Wiccan Billy, who we've propped up. We have another main character like Agatha, who can pop in and out anytime of different shows and movies here and there, and be like a guide for someone, be someone that pops up in a dream, be something scary or evil. She can have a lot of fun with that. We have a really great character, Death Rio, that's established, that can also pop up when they want to use Death as a character anytime. They've established Jen as another person who can come up and who has a lot of stories still to be told. And I think Alice, the full circle moment that she had, being the protector, getting that closure with her mom, was awesome. And maybe the best episode that we've ever had of any MCU TV show was Lilia's episode in this season, where we saw her realizing what she had to do, making sacrifices, like struggling as she was falling and tripping through time. I will think so highly of this show coming out of it. And this will be one that this is already on my, like, Halloween. I'm going to go back every year around Halloween and rewatch this thing, like, because it will lead you perfectly into Halloween. But it's much more than just a Halloween show. I can't say enough positive things about it. I really enjoyed this, and I don't even remember one or two of the episodes when we talked about them where we were that negative, and that's just rare. It's so rare to not have 1 or 2 weeks where we were like, they took a bad turn this week, or that didn't really make sense. Everything made sense. Everything made sense. The gripes are that we liked it so much that we wanted, like, more of this or more of that. But there weren't things where we were scratching our head going, why did they do that? That didn't seem true to the character, or that didn't seem true to the story they were telling us. And just really good stuff, man. I was really pleased. And I think in seeing the way that the MCU approached this year, I
Mhm.
feel a lot better about the future now. Like, I just
Yeah.
think when Disney Plus started, it was this new toy, and hey, we're gonna try things. We're gonna try to get as much out there as we can.
Yeah.
And you know what? Your stuff, the quality, you lose uh when you do that. You lose a little bit on the quality each and every time. Now,
Yeah.
let everybody like put each of these shows and movies into good hands of people that you trust and let them work.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah. Exactly. It
and
needs
because they'll
they
all
need.
be unique, right? They'll all be different if you're giving
Mhm.
the shows and the movies to different people. They're not all going to have the same,
Yeah.
vision or setting or ideas for comedy or drama or love, but give it to good people you trust and let them work, and don't keep
Yeah. Let
getting
them.
involved in like micromanaging everything.
Yeah, I mean, the micromanaging really has to come early on in the earlier, pre-production stuff, how things are going to fit together overall. But then they got to just hire the right people and let them cook and let them go into a project with the map. They need the roadmap. They can't be, making stuff up as they go along. I mean, sometimes that can work. There's room for improvisation, but they really need to have that roadmap locked in and the right people in those positions, and then let those people do their thing. And not let the suits, second guess everything, reshoot everything, or try to anticipate what people are going to want and get ahead of that. Now let's tell the stories like the best versions possible from the creators in the best way that they know how, and let those chips fall where they may. Are they all going to be the best thing ever? No, but I guarantee that approach generally will yield better results than when you have way too many cooks in the kitchen. You're beholden to too many executives, beholden to mandates for things that extend well beyond the stories you're trying to tell. They're corporate mandates for certain things that are that can either constrain the writers and the performers and the storytellers too much, or they don't allow for surprises or impactful things. One thing I loved about this series, like we talked about, the consistency of it, but also the stakes. I mean, dead characters died, or characters died, and those dead characters stayed dead,
Yep.
and they established that there
Even
was
Agatha, she's dead right now. She's
yeah,
not
yeah,
back to life. She could maybe at some point she gets back into a body or something. I wouldn't
exactly.
mind if she does for a short period of time, for like a quick thing. I don't want her to be fully back alive either, because like you said, it makes the stakes heavier, more
Yeah,
important when
yeah.
that actually happens. It yeah,
And for story, supernatural superhero stuff, you're dealing with life and death stakes, so that it has to match life and death stakes in our reality, or else it's going to feel trite.
yep.
It's going to feel like there's no weight or any stakes to any of this stuff, and like, what's the point in watching it? I mean, we can just turn on Saturday morning cartoons and watch Avengers, that were made in the 90s or whatever, and that'll give us that fix. I don't want that, really.
No.
There's a place for that in those stories and continuing on forever, and no characters will really die. But I'm watching the MCU where I signed up for kind of a more realistic, grounded adaptation of all these like supernatural, super powered characters, things that are larger than life, but they're the magic of the MCU was they brought that down to reality and made it like a believable world where these things could exist, and the world reflected, at least in the important ways, it reflects our own world and the stakes that exist in our own world. The further away you get from that, you can have a lot of fun with it, but you gotta maintain those stakes. That the simplest way to do that is like dead characters must stay dead, at least for the most part, and for a significant amount of time, or for forever is really how it should work.
This is a show that to me was perfect in a few
Mhm.
ways too. Like of okay, so nowadays we're in this like a sensitive time period where like if you lean too much into a character being ethnic or an immigrant or gay, then there's going to be a backlash from people who think it's just being woke, right? Just
Yeah,
for the point of being woke. But you got to be careful that you don't go one extreme or the other. You have to
right.
tell a story how the story should be told. And like in this, for example, it didn't matter if Billy was gay or not. It didn't matter if Agatha was like a lesbian or not. But those are things that weren't like huge parts of the show. But I'm glad that somebody didn't come in and just take those out of the show. Like that would have been, those might have been things where they're like, we don't need this kid to be gay, or like, we don't need him to be a lesbian, or like, those are things that might have gotten pulled out. They weren't such huge parts of the show that like we were having to lean into them. My point is that's how a story should be told, to where it's not the point of the story. It's just the setting. Like these are regular people who are dealing with stuff that any person would be. It's not about a kid that's gay. It's not about, just an immigrant. It's about Kamala Khan and the fact that Kamala's history is a different history than what we've had, right? Like those are how stories should be told, not just, oh, we're doing this for representation, or the opposite. Hey, we got to make sure we take that out of there because we don't want to make people uncomfortable. I'm glad this show felt like they knew who they were and they lived in their shoes and they were comfortable with it,
Yeah, they were trying to tell the story they were telling, and everything, all the details, all the motifs they used, they all served that story and the themes they wanted to explore. The characters all served that. Nothing felt there for the sake of a trick of the story, or
or we needed to get our diversity in, right, on this. Like we got to hire a couple actors that are that,
Exactly. But it did have representation in a good way. That didn't feel like it was pandering, or one way or the other. Like it just felt natural to the overall story, and it fit with the characters and what they would do. And that, I think, dovetails really nicely into a discussion about just the general artistry of this show. Every element they really nailed, and I think this was one of the cheaper budgeted shows of the MCU TV show. But yet the production value they got from episode to episode in terms of costumes, set design, special effects where they had it, the acting, the performers that were on this is maybe the best cast of any MCU TV show yet. The fact that they got Patty LuPone in there, and the type of actress that she is with her legacy, and that she is so integral to the story, that's, I think, speaks volumes. But also, somebody who is as in demand as Aubrey Plaza is right now, as popular as she is. And then, of course, you've got Catherine Hahn. We've talked so much about the writing and the acting, and the visual elements. One thing that I was absolutely in love with this series, the music, the soundtrack to it, in terms of like the score.
Really good.
It really, like, every episode ended where it made me feel like I wanted to watch the next one, and a lot of that was the music cues. The score underneath, the dramatic moments really gave a lot of weight to that, and it was catchy, like just a generally good score. And then, of course, you've got this original song that we hear multiple iterations throughout the series. And whenever you have an original song in a movie or TV show, it's almost guaranteed that thing's going to suck. It's not. Very rarely is it like, I can think of like That Thing You Do, a handful of other examples of like where the music.
But they're just cringy, you know what I mean? And they feel so like one line was good and the rest were yada 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 to fill out. Right? Every line it hits you more as you watch the season. Like every lyric are like the titles of some of these episodes, and then. Eric from New Rockstars would spend a couple of minutes just on the title or the one line of lyrics and what that would mean.
And it all fit, and it served the themes and the motifs and what the characters were going through. And a lot of times would be a double entendre, or play on words where there's more to it than just the surface level interpretation of it. But yeah, and down to like they had Jack Antonoff produce the version of Witches Road in the finale. Like Jack Antonoff of Bleacher, he's a great, great, great pop producer. He's like Taylor Swift's #1 collaborator, but his pop project that he has is called Bleachers, and they have a lot of really good he has a lot of really good songs through Bleachers. He's also produced for Lorde, and a lot of the top female pop stars. He's like one of their main collaborators. Like any of the top female pop stars of the last
15 years or more, like he's had a hand in some of their biggest and best songs. He's absolutely great. So the fact that he was working on this, it's so fitting for, collaborating with women. Obviously, that fits his career, and this is a show, by women, about women. So that had that kind of continuity to it, I guess. But also, he's just such a singular talent. I think the most prolific producer of our, this current generation right now. And what a great thing to have him, as a part of it. I didn't even know that until I saw him in the credits. I'm like, holy cow! Like he's part of this too. Like this show and the details of it have just so much going for it. And yeah, I didn't know it was going to be that going into it. I wanted to see it because I liked WandaVision and I like Captain Han and I like the actors that were in it. I didn't have expectations that it would be as good as this is.
Well, and it wasn't, they didn't sell us on this show like it was going to be either. Like they didn't build it up like this show is going to be incredible, which they do sometimes, and that can be a detriment to the movies or shows that get built up like this is supposed to be the next coming of the, and it came, I think, at a good time, right after a lot of positive energy from Deadpool.
Yeah.
Right. And like, this is a really nice follow-up to that. After we were all in a fun mood with Deadpool, we got him in with Hugh Jackman. We had a lot of fun watching that movie. Now this had more heart,
Yeah, it did.
And like you said, it wasn't something that we were even, oh yeah, Agatha's coming up next. Like that's going to be the next show. We weren't waiting for it in the zeitgeist to be this huge deal. And now we really feel like we're back on track. And I think I sent you a text the other day and said, we had kind of a quiet year this year, but we actually, coming out of this, we have a lot of MCU stuff in the next few years, like moving forward. I think we have Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man in January. Or first we have What If coming up.
What If? Yeah.
I think next month.
December.
January, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man show. Captain America Brave New World in February. Daredevil Born Again in March. The Thunderbolts in May. Fantastic Four in July. So
that's a change of pace for sure.
But I will say
the delays.
These are things that have been in the works for a while.
Yeah,
all of these. They're not rushed. It's not like when we came to Disney Plus and they rushed this show to get there. It's like these are all stuff that have actually gotten pushed back. I think Captain America got pushed back. Daredevil definitely got pushed back, and Fantastic Four did. So if they're going to push these things back, right, to make them better, that's what I want. I'd rather have it be, let's get it right. And if it comes out and we have 2 or 3 things in a row, or maybe next year we only have one, let's just make sure it was because we got these things right. And that's when they come out, not necessarily because we need one in January and then we need another one in May and then we need another one in November.
Right. And that's like quarterly corporate thinking, like the schedule in the past, they've been beholden to the schedule. That was one of the many, things I was talking about, like where if the story just serves the characters and the production serves the story and the characters that they're trying to tell, that's great. But if the production has all these other interests that they're trying to balance, and that's the nature of filmmaking, granted, there's going to be a little bit of that. There's a business side to it, but that they can't have that steering the ship entirely. Like if a movie's not ready, like we can't release it just because. So that's how they're going to make their quarterly bonuses, because they promised shareholders they would have a release during this time. Like that's how you kill your brand. You release something before it's ready, or that's not up to snuff. Everybody's appreciation of the product as a whole, or the identity of Marvel as a whole goes down. The next time around, people aren't going to be lining up to see the movie, because last time, you put out a less than good product, maybe even a very bad product, and it's insulting as a viewer, as an audience member, when we get fed the schlock or stuff that was just rushed out to meet a deadline. Like we know what we're looking at when we see that. And
what's funny is
they react.
It's not even that bad. Like, we've just got such a high standard that they've set early on, which is a good thing. Like, they did such a good job with some of their first movies, like Iron Man and, Captain America, that we have, they set the tone there for us, what to expect, to where when they give us less than, we're not even going to accept it. It's funny because, like, in other genres, you would be more accepting of some crap here and there. But, like, for them, they gave us such a high bar from the beginning that we know they can hit that. And we're not going to tolerate or, like, accept anything less than that. And even in this Disney Plus era, where I don't think a lot of stuff was bad, but if we were comparing it to some of the quality of the earlier stuff, it just wasn't the same quality. I think it was almost like, okay, we went through that phase. Now we know what is best for us and for our viewers is we'll give them a little less and a better quality than more often and lesser quality. Because for some people, that's fine. Like, other shows, other things, people want another season. They want more to watch. They want another episode. If it's like a C plus or a B minus versus an A, the quality doesn't matter as much as it's just content. You can't do that with Marvel, with MCU. You just cannot do that with them.
No, there's an expectation of quality that they have to meet, and if they don't, they're gonna die. We'll hang in there for a few extra chances given the track record that they've gotten. So that's why we've seen a few not so good Marvel projects and continue to go to the movies, and we continue to cover them because they've established themselves as such a winning a company of storytellers, and we love those early movies so much that we're hopeful that they'll do that again, and we do see glimmers of that continuously. But yeah, it would be a complete lie to say that they were consistent throughout all that post-COVID stuff, all that the multiverse saga. To say that was on the level of the stuff that came before, it's just not. No one can agree to that. I think even the biggest fans of the current iteration of Marvel will admit to a dip in quality after.
And maybe you liked it, and maybe you didn't dislike it, but that doesn't mean the quality was the same.
Exactly, and that's why it's so refreshing that this series was so consistent. We were waiting for that other shoe to drop. The corporate interference, or the not
right, like the evil bird on the one shoulder. Like, you're waiting for that. Like, like you're getting like anxious. Like, one of these bad episodes is coming, and it never really came. It didn't.
Which is great. So it bodes really, really well for the future. And I thought it was interesting to see the reactions from people. On YouTube, the people and the channels that generally have stayed with Marvel, the new rock stars, a Screen Crush, they're generally favorable, I think, of Marvel, and they were all about the series. Very few critiques, but then some of the guys who've been against, the MCU as of late, were consistent with just not liking it to the end, and I continuously just scratch my head at that. So, like, guys like Film Threat, Nerdrotic, WDW Pro, very jaded about Agatha all along. They called it agony all along, apathy all along. They even after the finale, I think Film Threat posted "Ding Dong, the witch is dead," and then I'm like, what show were you watching? Because you go to these other channels, guys who are could go either way with it. Guys like Dan Merle, Nando. They really liked Agatha. They put it in the top tier of their shows, either as good as or better than WandaVision. Comics Explained put it in his top 3. Obviously, like we said, New Rockstars loved the show. Everything awesome. It's in my top 1 or 2. I mean, I would put
Me
it
too.
I would tie it with WandaVision because to me they're so together, even though they had different direction, the same writer throughout. Like, it feels like season 1 and season 2 of like the same.
And I think they said it's part of like the trilogy. Like, the Vision show is going to be like the third part of this series, which is great. Like, you could feel it. It was enough of like WandaVision, but unique enough also. Like, that first episode, And throughout some of the glimpses, you knew exactly where they were going. And the entire big picture of Billy creating the road is just like Wanda creating the Westview Hex. Same exact thing. But the stories being told throughout are different enough. And it's a show that, while it builds on WandaVision, it's one that you can bring to your other friends who don't know the MCU as much, and they could enjoy the show without feeling like they had to go back and do a bunch of prerequisite work before the show.
Yeah.
That's another positive. I just
it's just WandaVision, really. I mean, the only one you really have to see, I think, is probably just WandaVision for this show.
Yeah,
Helps to see the other, and to have seen Multiverse of Madness. There's connections there and whatnot, but you don't need those necessarily. WandaVision and this are self-contained enough.
I think for me, it's right now head and shoulders, WandaVision, Agatha All Along, and Loki as my three shows that were just kind of above, on a tier above the rest of them. And when we get things that are this quality, that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm looking for. And I appreciate, I think with those shows, with all three of them, the one thing that they're not similar and they're different in ways, but where they're similar is all of those shows were like big swings.
Yeah.
They were different. They weren't playing it safe with any of them. And when you try to play it too safe, right, you get like, okay, like not everything's going to work. They took big swings. They threw some darts at the wall, but they stuck pretty well because of that. And I really enjoyed this. And I love where we'll be headed in the next year. I know you and I talk about how we don't watch. I try not to watch clips. I definitely don't get into spoilers. But I caught one trailer recently of the Thunderbolts that came out, and there's just there's a great scene of them just driving in the car with Alexi, and they're just like, the characters are funny, and I'm really looking forward to all of these villain characters teaming up in Thunderbolts. It should be a blast.
That one gives me the feeling of like old school Marvel, like the middle of the Infinity Saga.
Yes.
I am really looking forward to that one. I think, I've avoided the trailers as much as possible. I have seen little bits of the trailer here and there. And what I've seen, I really enjoy. I'm very intrigued by the title Thunderbolts with the asterisk. I don't know if that is because there's a secret title, or if thematically the asterisk plays into, like the what happens in the plot and the story. Either way could be really interesting. I think I heard something about there's like a secret character. If you know it, don't tell me. But I heard there's maybe a character that's being hidden from public knowledge that might be in that movie. That would be kind of big news. That's literally all I know about it. I could be totally wrong, but that one stands out to me as being like the one that I'm most pumped for. That's right around the corner, but cautiously optimistic. Looking forward to Captain America 4. I don't have high hopes for it because of how many reshoots and delays they had on it, but I still think it could be really interesting and could have some good stuff there. The animated series, like you said, What If season 3 coming around, that's snuck up on us pretty quick, and that'll be for, I think, leading up to Christmas, and I think they're dropping daily, so that'll be a lot all at once. And Spider-Man, I every little thing I've seen of that looks like it could be really cool. I can't wait to watch that with my son. Actually, point I want to make too about this series, WandaVision, I was really impressed that it was such an enjoyable show for all ages. I mean, that I'm an adult who likes the MCU, so maybe I have a little bit of a sophomoric, sensibility here, I suppose. But I felt like it hit on all these different levels, like what we've talked about, the horror, the comedy, the supernatural fun stuff, the camp. But like I watched it with my 4-year-old son, and there was a few parts that were a little bit maybe too scary for him, but being next to me, I don't think it ever went too far. It wasn't inappropriate for him, and he enjoyed it. He watched it with me, and he wanted to watch it again next time. So I thought that spoke a lot about the quality of the show, that as a family we could just sit down and enjoy it. And I didn't feel like I was watching a kid's show or that he was rocking the.
That's the part that I don't agree with the critiques of this, in
Mhm.
that, like,
Right.
it sounded like the people that were critical were like, oh, this is
Mhm.
like a kid show or like a witches show, or like, it's not.
Why,
I did not feel that way ever. Like, I
yeah,
never, like,
yeah,
it's
same.
something you could watch with your kid, but I never felt like they were dumbing it down for me,
Right.
or like, the child's humor, the different type of humor. It wasn't like that. It
Right.
didn't make me feel stupid for watching it, which,
Yep.
sometimes you'll watch something with your kids and you're like, rolling your eyes a lot at some of the humor that's so
Yeah.
deliberate, or that's so, this wasn't that way. So I agreed with you. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. This was one of the shows where I just don't agree with the critiques. I just don't agree with them. Like, for what I'm looking for in a show,
Mhm.
any person has the right to not like something, but not liking something and saying something isn't good or well done or at least
Not the same
consistent.
thing.
Those are two different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, exactly. You more power to you. You didn't like it. That's your opinion. That's fine. But like, if you're saying this was a bad show,
It's
you're
not.
wrong. I'm
Yeah,
going to tell you right now, you
you're
are
wrong.
wrong. It was a really
Like,
good show.
it was.
I liked it a lot. Every single episode, I wanted to see more of it. I feel like it paid off on every level. I mean, I feel a little like cheesy gushing over it so much. Like I've said 2 times already in this, I feel like I'm
But
overstating it in a
no, but you're
way, but
not.
struggling to find like the right words to really capture how I felt about it, because it just was a delight. It was a
Our,
good show through and through, and I actually don't see a lot of shows that can deliver on the level of quality, in the broad sense that they were able to be effective on this. Just the nimble character of the show, being able to jump so quickly between dark, scary, funny, campy, silly, poignant, emotional, a little bit melodramatic, everything, like even a little bit sexy here and there, on a Disney Plus
yep.
show, without being too much of anything, or not, I mean, without falling short of anything. It's very difficult to be all things at once, and the show did
We're,
a really good job of doing a lot at once.
yeah, we're literally here picking apart every one of these movies and shows piece by piece,
Yeah,
week by week,
yeah,
dissecting them for like what they've done right and what they've done wrong. And in just a very, like, logistical way, like playing the game Operation, this thing
yeah,
did well. Like, it checked all the boxes that you want a movie to check. If it made you feel more or less, that's an individual thing. But if you were just breaking this down for like the pieces of it on the inner workings, everything was
yeah,
done very, very, very well. So
yeah,
um
yeah,
I applaud them, because there are few shows and movies that we've gone through that we've had less to be critical about. Not even of the quality, of just like, that didn't make
yeah.
sense, or why did they introduce that person and then not really go more into it with them, or why did they do that? Like,
Mhm.
we get everything that happened here, and now we're set up really well moving forward. Man,
Yeah.
another one in the books.
I
Agatha,
don't-
all along. We can put a bow on that one. And when we return, I think in like a month, did I say Skeleton Crew is the next one that comes up for Star Wars
Star
in
Wars,
early
yeah.
December,
Forward to that. Yeah,
which
John
looks,
Watts. So crossing over from Marvel to Star Wars here. Interesting to see how that'll go.
and man,
Coming off Spider-Man movies and going into the world of Star Wars.
so right now, as we talk, it's November the 10th. Milo, my son, is going to be 5 on November the 12th. It's really crazy to think about how the time has flown in the, I think, like 4 years now that we've been
Yeah,
doing this, that you've been helping me.
yeah.
Like, my son is completely
Going on
grown up.
forward.
You're going to have a kid that's like 1 year behind him. That's right behind
Yeah.
him. Like, how much
We,
time
yeah, we did Wanda. The
while
first
you were
WandaVision. I
in
did
the
it from
hospital?
the hospital. Yeah,
In
when
the
when
hospital.
my first son was being born, and now I've watched this series with him. That's what I
Like
was
the
just talking
sequel
about. So
series. Like, it's come
that
full circle.
that
That's
really, yeah, I didn't
incredible.
even put that together actually until just
Wow.
I was saying it. Wow, like
Wow.
time flies too, because I swear yesterday I had a baby and today I have a little boy. And it's like, how is it possible? Like what? Everybody says it, but it's so much more true than you realize until you're living
You're
it,
in. I know you think it's one of those cliches that when people say those kinds of things, you're like, oh yeah, the time flies. It really,
It
really does.
yeah.
You snap your fingers and they're there. And now we'll have a few weeks. Enjoy the holiday Thanksgiving with the family, and then after that we'll get into the world of Star Wars, and we'll take a look at Skeleton Crew. Make sure that all of you out there are following Tim on Twitter, on Instagram. Tim is not funny. Check out the incredible movies and projects that he's in, music stuff with his wife. Super, super talented. Just great. Honestly, they're great workers. They're great people. I love both you and Jackie. You guys are awesome. And was going to let you know too that we're throwing a little. I'll tell you more after the break, but we're hopefully we can see you because we're going to throw a little something for Milo next weekend. It's kind of a late last minute party. So everyone out there, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll be back talking Star Wars with Tim in just a few weeks. Make sure to go back and relive all of your favorite moments from Agatha All Along with our deep dive recaps and reviews of all of the episodes 1 through 9. Thank you so much, buddy. I look forward to talking to you again in a few weeks. And thanks to all of you out there for hanging out with us here on That's What G Said podcast.